Hello. Welcome to the Xirtus.
Synctank.
Hey.
Oh, that's a great start.
Hey.
Oh,
Hello, everyone.
Hey, what's up?
dude, his max headdrumming out.
Do we a little bit of
before
that
the
Max
call.
Headroom right at the end there? My favorite part of the show. I wanted to say that we have a nice time. Well, welcome guest Kurt. You know him. You love him. You know his cat.
It's a pleasure to be
How's
here.
it going?
The cat will be back soon.
And so I have some complaints and grievances with the world that probably go before synchronicity this week. I didn't mean to be like this, but because I always tell myself, don't talk about things contemporaneously. But I watched Peacock's Olympic ceremony, whatever the heck, man. And I saw the gymnast in Romania. And I'm not even talking about this one. There's another one who was disqualified because they said she stepped out of bounds. Even though we have cameras now and technology, we don't need these judges, right? You can just scan it and see that she didn't step out of bounds. But they say she stepped out of bounds. And so now Romania is basically disqualified. Plus they gave extra points to some other girl from America who did step outside of the bounds. She jumped outside of the bounds. I'm not I shouldn't care, you know what I mean? But the point is, Romania is in an interesting political situation. All right, the Romanian prime minister will boycott the Olympics, closing the ceremony over Jordan Childs' scandalous gymnastics medal. Right after they had awarded it to the girl with bronze, they're all right, we're not going to give you the gold you deserve. Romania should have gotten gold, but instead they stripped the bronze even and gave it to Childs, which again, because this other girl stepped out of bounds, which she didn't, to a girl who did step out of bounds. I don't know if this is a sync thing to me, but I keep wondering about it because Romania, Ukraine, Russia, the oil, right? Everybody knows the Olympics are political. So the idea that Romania is selling the oil for Russia, and yet also that Romania is delivering payloads against Russian drones, that they're caught in the middle of being the middleman,
Do you feel did you look at the footage closely and that's your assessment and said she didn't step out of bounds, which is why you're saying
there's no question, because they have cameras on all angles of the thing, and she was really close to the bounds because she came right to the edge,
There's no you don't get to step up to the Empire and spit and then say the thing that's going to get the Empire going, you're out of here, that's it, I've had it.
Well, I feel that's the thing that's ironic, because the Romanians could have said hey, judges, look at all, reanalyze or something, which they didn't do. But then they did do that for Julie Childs, right? And they're well, look at this again and consider what she did. I know she went out of bounds, but consider she went 17 feet or whatever. And they're okay, we're going to give her 10% more points. And so America gets this award, which they don't really deserve. America doesn't deserve this award.
Devil's advocate on this, though, is that the ability to do photo finishes and do all this post, event analysis and question the judge's call is fairly new in context of the entire history of the Olympics, right? Like within the last century is the only time they really had this ability to like nitpick it after the fact. So in a devil's advocate sense, just going with what the judge says kind of feels like historically more, in line with what the Olympics have always been about. Because now, I guess you're kind of right too, though, Andreas, where it's like, don't we have computers that could do this? We literally do. We could have like laser sensors and everything.
In this one circumstance, because usually I would agree with you. Like, keep things gay and covered in oil.
But part of maintaining that human connection is accepting the human flaws of like bad calls from judges and possibly even corruption. I feel like that's almost so inherent within the actual experience of the Olympics at any point in history. No.
It's probably worth considering. Like you look at like East Germany and the Soviets giving people everyone would be like 9.99, they get like 8.7. Like always bring it down a little bit. And is it just that they're trying to bring it down, or is it that they're more critical because they're aware of the criticism that they faced in their own lives, so they're constantly trying to give a more fair assessment? I don't know, but it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, somebody called this the most disgraceful Olympics, and I wasn't at the 1936 Nazi Olympics that substantiated Nazi Germany to like 10 different
Neil
countries.
deGrasse Tyson's dad was there. So obviously it was the most inclusive one. Let's be real. Like, it's not what people told us, I think.
Interesting. Yeah.
Interesting take, yeah.
What a mess though, man. I don't know.
What do you She's like, not my table. Kurt, what do you think of the Olympics? Do you care?
I want to root for Team USA this year. No, I like basketball.
What?
So.
What? Why? Okay, go on with that. Explain to me why. Because I get that. I heard this before, and I know this is actually like a normative thing, is to root for your nation, your sex, your race, your human.
Absolutely. How could you not be rooting for the U.S. team right now?
Because it doesn't. It's not my lot. Because I hate them, and I'm not just the country. Like the people that are running, like Childs and Biles, are not like people I want to win. And I think that the other characters are better. But more importantly, I'm not rooting for one or another. I'm rooting for all of your species. You know what I mean? I want your whole species. I want your planet. I want your world to survive and your species to thrive.
Oh, I just want America to win gold.
That's
all.
Yeah, I just don't get that. Like, because America's like a banana republic, you know?
No, man, it's like, why? Okay, I mean, bear with me, but why did the Masons want to cap the Great Pyramid with the gold? Why not just pick some random pyramid? Why wouldn't they pick the second tallest pyramid to cap?
Well, technically, on the Great Seal, that's kind of more of a Nubian style pyramid. You can tell by the slant of it.
Well, I'm talking about the literal cap. They wanted to do an actual capping, and I think in 2000 or 2001, and it got turned down by the
2001. I thought they wanted to do it.
Dude,
that cap secretly did. They did.
That cap needs to be crystal anyway, man. You need it in order for the portal space time to work.
If you cap it, that's crazy. Like that would actually do real harm, I think.
No, man, there's the shaft that goes into the King's Chamber that people go to look at every day as it moves through the room, that they made a recreation of at the UN for the Lucis Trust.
Jones,
but like, that's the whole thing, man. It's a freaking crystal, man. You're doing some crazy crystal magic back then. Dig it.
It goes, crystals are dangerous. They channel spirits, and you open up to demons. I better use my crystal-powered cell phone to warn anyone about crystals.
Based.
Pretty much. I think that... All right, sorry, Kurt, you got cut off, didn't you? You had thoughts about the Olympics, and I cut you off. I'm a bad friend.
That's okay. Like, it's strange to view all the politics. I don't have any, I don't think actual philosophy about this subject, but it is just anecdotes. Like, my dad, he's like ultra conservative, and like I think there's a group of people that in the past, 30 years ago would have been, super pro USA, and it's now like everything's so political. I'm like, hey, Dad,
you don't mean conservative, you mean patriotic, right? Like he's not a Mennonite. He's not like a traditional conservative.
I guess to me those things overlap sometimes, but so yeah,
he's a nationalist. Your dad's a nationalist.
No, I feel like there used to be a lot more just straight up, straightforward nationalism in the U.S. 30 years ago, and that is dissipated to a degree. Now people are like retro natural nationalists. They only stand up for the old USA, not what it is now, and so that's why it's like. Yeah, we talked about, make America great again, because apparently right now it's not great. It was so much greater in the past. And people are really, really into that nostalgia. So, but like, why can't we just like root for people? It's
wasn't America at its greatest when we were like creating mock battles in Manila and killing innocent people to steal their resources? Like, isn't the 99% of the resources in the hand of a fifth of the world's population what we're referring to when we talk about America at its greatest?
That's
right?
probably,
which, in other words, Guam and the Philippines and all these other places that are Mexico, Argentina, like any place that has been invaded and controlled by the United States. Shouldn't that kind of count then as like the American Pax Americana?
The not so secret history of the drug war and fucking Reagan going back, Nixon. It's just been this ongoing charade of like, and whenever there's a war on something, you should be a little, your attention should be a little heightened to what's the charade. And they love to have wars on things that go on forever. So one of the forever wars is the drug trade. So, and the
war on drugs is ridiculous though, because you can't really drive on drugs. Why do they want to fight wars on drugs? But it's the main problem.
Well, we have a classification of drugs of things that aren't even really drugs. I mean, you can call anything a drug if you want. Your body's full of drugs all the time, and it's just something that your body produces. But like, there are different senses of the terms, and so like, yeah, a lot of these things, a lot of the things we classify as drugs are not drugs. Like, for example, I'll call it natural marijuana. I know medical marijuana is a different animal entirely, but natural marijuana was never really a drug. We just classified it that way for political purposes. It was an herb. Like, if you open up, like, what are those things called? You open up those plants that have the goo inside and put it on your burn. Are you treating yourself with drugs, or are you treating yourself?
Aloe? Talking about aloe vera?
Yeah, aloe. Thank you. Yeah, I should know that, but yeah, it was on my brain. But yeah, like if we do that and we apply it to ourselves, like, yeah, we're applying drugs to ourselves, kind of, in a sense, but we never classified it that way because it makes a million times more sense to say, oh, we're just treating ourselves with an herb.
Kind of, sort of, though, but aloe vera is not psychoactive, whereas even the like weak, old school Mexican dirtweed is psychoactive. So I feel like if you're doing like, getting technical with it, it does feel like a drug. Like, it's hard to
what though?
Like opium would be a drug, right? Like a narcotic, and that's also just a plant in some regards.
Dude, that Mex weed though that you're describing,
like tobacco, where it feels weird.
Yeah. That goes really well with like Budweiser and Clamato. Like if you like got some good Mex where it's all like like compacted like that.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's maybe some
where the seeds are nice and crushed in there and like just ground up on their own. Yeah, it's great.
Taiwan can't compete as Taiwan, and there was that time that they drugged their orange juice so that he couldn't compete. He went out all belligerent, didn't know what happened for like 20 years. He wasn't sure like what had gone down until eventually like some Freedom of Information Act showed that the CIA awesome. Helped that. Yeah.
Oh.
I don't know. Well, drugs, but I was thinking more about like the Mac Headroom. That was my fault because I was going to talk about the Bush dynasty or something. I was thinking about how America evolved because you mentioned Reagan, and you can look at the Kennedy. Did you see that movie Executive Action that I found?
No, you just shared that link. I haven't gotten to it.
I did not see that one.
So Burt Lancaster as George Herbert Walker Bush, basically, and planning the Kennedy assassination. And so it's one. This is I don't know why no one's seen this movie, except that it was like universally panned. Like they were like, this is not funny at all. And how absurd is this idea that there would be a conspiracy against Kennedy, But basically it's all the data that they have, it's really accurate data the whole movie, and basically they're like, we're not saying this happened, but like, what? Do you believe what they're telling you? Do you believe it was? And then they just
I don't
kind
think
of
I've
show
seen
you
that.
how they can.
I have to watch this now.
Wait,
It's
so
free on YouTube, and they Mission Impossible. They like study. They're like, okay, well, we have a failed double agent, right? We had an agent. Was a failed Marine, Oswaldovich. We sent him over to Moscow. He gets compromised. They send him back. We could use him somehow. I don't think it's worth using him. What we should do is frame him because we want to take out the potential of a Kennedy dynasty. Is really threatening to the Bush family. As you all know from Kennedy's presidency, he was using silver-backed currency. He was doing the nuclear armistice deal, the treaty and the nuclear arms, right before his assassination. And there's flyers during the assassination, during his protest, his parade, his motorcade. People had put up flyers that said "wanted for treason," with pictures of JFK's head. Which is interesting because treason is like one of the only, I think it's like the only constitutional crime mentioned in the Constitution, and it tells you what the punishment is, which is execution. Right.
Also,
they're saying
really
this is some we need to take out the potential of his brother becoming president after him.
It was several things all at the same time, right?
Sorry,
it was
guys,
also just Cuba. So you had him standing up apparently to generals. From my understanding, this is like documented that they wanted to attack Cuba because of military bases from Russia in Cuba, which are actually not as close as our current military bases with NATO to Russia right now. So I like to point that out because it's pretty ironic.
That's not the real reason, though, right? Like the real reason was like the mob and the WASPs had worked together to control Cuba, had installed.
For their actual incentive? Yeah. But what way he experienced it and what he was reacting to, you're absolutely right that was the bigger issue. And then that even connected to freaking them, that all their thoughts around him getting elected. His father was a bootlegger, the story. So yeah, they thought he was going to be one of the good old boys, and then once he was elected, he wasn't. And they were like, wait, what the hell? High hopes. That was the Frank Sinatra song for Kennedy, right?
I kind of feel too, though, aside from like the mob's obvious motive to be involved in that, I feel that every single presidential assassination or attempt after Lincoln, which instituted the Secret Service, ever since the Secret Service has been around, the only time something's gotten through, it's because that president wasn't on the best terms with the type of people that could have made sure the Secret Service was performing at their utmost, performative level.
They slowed the car down and they get off. Normally they would have somebody on the back of the thing, and it's like, dude, absolutely. And RFK Sr., his death. You've seen the BBC thing on that where they show you the forensics and that it's known this is from a guy who got shot in the head and survived, like grazed the top of his head or whatever. Another guy got shot and killed and shot in the head, but there's no bullets from Sirhan's gun were ever found in Robert Kennedy, and they've accounted for every bullet that he shot of all 8 bullets that loaded into his revolver, and the bullets that actually hit Kennedy were at very close range, and there was carbon, you could see how close it was, and there was one guy behind him and he was security, so like standing right up next to him, you can see him there. And so we basically know in all likelihood who killed Robert Kennedy, but nothing ever came of it because that was like case closed. Despite those forensics, it's pretty nuts.
It's literally just Game of Thrones. Just
it's a federal location with the textbook depository of all things, right? Like the educational propaganda system controlled by the Rockefellers, McGraw-Hill, etc., that are taking textbooks from America, creating textbooks from America, sending them to Africa, shredding up all the textbooks that they don't want to have on the street because they're they have information that they don't want out anymore, or because they can make more money forcing you to buy. It's like there's 9 rackets inside of rackets inside of rackets inside of that, military control essentially.
Are you talking about symbolism of the book's depository building? Okay.
Not just symbolism, but like the actual infrastructure of who ran and runs that.
Because I've always related to, I think what you're saying, like I've related to Bush W in that classroom with those kids, and not just like what they're reading, how creepy that is, that it's like steel, plain, must, whatever they're saying, for my pet goat, but that just the way that style of teaching that that you witness in that video is like, this is what's wrong with, like, this is wrong. Like, this is a bad approach to education, in my opinion. Like, and we're like, he was in that room, like, kind of celebrating it. And like, why was that, like, that photographer who got the bullet for Trump, who captured that when he put his camera on shutter and caught the bullet actually whizzing by, like, that's the same guy in the room. Like, this kind of event, like, I'm like, was this a be more significant? I don't know what the hell. So yeah,
They got to make sure they got him so that he actually takes that photo, because they know that he's got like the track record for catching those moments. And there's another Bush connection to the JFK assassination that I don't think anyone's really talked about too much, because I only found it when I was doing research for a comic. But that's that George the Mohrenschildt, who was kind of like the central figure in all this. He was the liaison in Texas to when Lee Harvey brought his wife Marina there. And he was kind of like the guy that would introduce you to all the other sort of Soviets in the area. Like, that was the welcoming party. He just happened to also have known Jackie before she became a Kennedy, when she was a Bouvier. And he used to say that she used to sit on his knee when she was a little girl. He also, his official job, way before he even was a liaison with Oswald, is that he was a scout to find oil in Haiti for Zapata Oil, which was the Bush oil company. So you've got this one guy that is directly connected to and employed by Bush. He's clearly an intelligence agent of some kind of nature. He also knew the Bouvier family, and he ends up being the central figure in welcoming Oswald back. So how does this one guy that connects to all the people involved in the JFK assassination, all the possible people, at throughout different points of their life? It's not like he just entered the scene.
Don't forget that John Hinckley's dad was at dinner with Bush the night before he went after Reagan. It's like a lot. It's kind of like it's like a Hillary Clinton snow effect, you know?
Well, and
like
I was going to say, that's the Haiti connection. Seems like there's something really important there, because even when Oswald even when JFK got assassinated, Mohrenschildt was in Haiti. Like, he put himself as far away as he possibly could and had like crazy alibis, and everyone saw him. And as soon as he heard there was like a commotion in the U.S., he was quoted as saying, this is in the back of the Warren Commission report, that he knew that it was Oswald, and he knew that Oswald had killed JFK. Like, before he even heard anyone say anything, it was like, oh my God, something has happened in the U.S. And he knew that, and he said he knew that. And that's in his own memoir that he
check
published.
out the Few and Far Between in Jamaica and in Cuba. Here are the like 3 or 4. You know, there's like a few star forts there. Then go to Haiti. Like, even like compare it to the Dominican Republic. Haiti's covered in star forts. The whole place is just a huge. It's really a hyper civilization, like a Tartary Atlantis thing with these megalith structures. There's a reason why they keep it poor, right?
And this is why, is the Clinton Foundation have such a strong presence in Haiti in particular? Why is Haiti, out of all the different areas, seems to have some crazy like political capital, like a black magic voodoo political capital that they all tap into?
My favorite was Audrey Marina Rachel Oswald was only 33 days old. Only 33, not a month, 33 days old when her father assassinated JFK.
I keep thinking that's Lydia from the original Beetlejuice every time I see this photo.
It's like, yeah, there's a vibe, bro. There's definitely like, this is, if you've ever had if you've ever seen MK Ultra, I don't know if you have MK Ultra DAR, you know what I mean? But blip, 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 blip. That's all I'm saying. The thing I liked about the executive action movie is that it's very much Mission Impossible episode. This guy is paid as an agent to assume the identity of Oswald, upset a bunch of people, and then tell them, like, see that you do. The name's Oswald, you fool. Just basically be belligerent, and so people can say, yeah, I saw Oswald. I saw that guy. I shot right next to him at a shooting range. Yeah, I know who you're talking about. That definitely was him. Because
he did get arrested in the military for punching a superior. Oswald.
Yeah, I mean. Yeah, well, his superior was probably a bourgeoisie capitalist and wasn't going to defend him.
You're absolutely right.
I mean, and I had this debate. Actually, this is something I wanted to bring up. If Oswald is a communist, but he's a Marine, which one trumps? Because Marine camaraderie, I'm asking about. In a Marine camaraderie situation, you live and die for somebody, but they're communist. Is where do you go with is that okay or not? Some people were telling me better dead than red. Other people were telling me you're a Marine, bro. You can once you're a Marine, you're a Marine. It's like second anointing. What do you believe?
I think it's kind of second anointing. Yeah. It doesn't mean you're not also going to turn into some
right.
like crazy, you know, serial killer. That could also happen and be second anointed. But yeah, you'll be
Yeah,
a Marine
yeah.
the entire time, and you'll be damn good at it.
Right. I'm just talking about. I'm just saying though that if you're like some people were like Marines are anti-communist and they wouldn't have a comrade who's a communist. I'm saying I disagree with that. I don't think that's necessarily true. I think a Marine cares less about politics than people think.
Is a well-trained attack dog or a well-oiled AR-15 necessarily communist or capitalist, or is it just a peak weapon at its, you know, fighting potential?
So,
I sent you
yeah.
a pamphlet. Let me see if I can track that down. I'm trying to. So it pretty much goes in the opposite direction. Well, and goes in line with what you're saying. I'm just trying to track it down. But okay, so there was this ex-Marine, and he was an officer for many, many, many years. And okay, let's see. Smedley Butler, Brigadier General Smedley Butler, written in 1937. So basically, he wrote a little pamphlet that does make rounds every now and again, called "War's a Racket." And so I'm pretty sure by the end of his life, he was a pretty solid communist. But yeah, just a little pamphlet. He goes over like how X, Y, and Z company at least, you know, like 10x their profits over the course of the war, and how the entire war had no motivation and morality whatsoever. It's just like, well, you know, a lot of people had hands in the game, and you know, if you have the human resources, which don't really matter to you on a social or emotional, spiritual level, expend them and make your money. So that's pretty much the premise of the entire pamphlet. Yeah, I don't think people are indoctrinated to the point where they can't swing their beliefs, because like it's swung pretty hard in the opposite direction.
Well, I liked that in the movie you got an agent who is playing Oswald, and it's kind of this very like I wasn't supposed to be here today kind of thing, like Dante in Clerks. You know, he's not really supposed to be at work, and it's not him. And maybe his wife in the movie, they kind of suggest from documents that they have from the Warren Commission that his wife is probably a double agent too, working for the CIA, right? That she's got a handler and she was his handler, which I think a lot of people have said, right? That Oswald's Russian wife was probably to some extent his handler. So I think it's an interesting story, and the way they present it, they're like, we're not sure what's going on, but there's just too many uncanny things. Like, for instance, talking about the Bay of Pigs earlier, the company that the CIA created in order to get the hundreds of thousands of people, and like there were hundreds of thousands of people that were leaving from Cuba, you know, and there was maybe like about 200,000 people and like 80,000 people that were CIA trained, given guns, all these things from Cuba. Not counting Americans, because you have people in Louisiana and Florida and all these other places that they trained for these missions, right? And they created a company to get all the resources for this, put 4,000 or 8,000 CIA agents working for this company. It was called Zenith Innovative Enterprises, right? And then in the movie, there's a major connection where they build a company just to be the fair play for Cuba, so that there's something that can look like it's an alternative to that, you know, because now they're saying they're anti-Fidel Castro. So here's something that would be pro-Fidel Castro that only exists so that Oswald can look like he's a pro-Fidel Castro American, which is like not allowed in that moment. And they can get pictures of him looking bad. And they do this from the Zenith television, and they do this out of Chicago from the, you know, with I forget the exact name, but there's a perfect sync to it. And only in the last, I think, 30 years or something, they've released the information that shows the CIA created Zenith Enterprises. So whoever made this had access to information that wasn't Freedom of Information Act for decades after it was made. So I have to wonder, okay, so who made this movie? Trumbo.
No, right? Really?
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So that's the
now
thing.
My mind is blown. I was interested before, but now you just sent me over the line.
Yeah. So Dalton Trumbo, who was one of the the forbidden.
Did he write it under an alias, or what? Did he release it as Trumbo? Was it post Spartacus?
This is post Spartacus. Is 1973. Okay. So this was he was one of the blacklisted Hollywood 10, right? And so he'd done some incredible work, as you know, and was blacklisted, not able to make films for quite some time until after this. And there's definitely references throughout the movie to this, like PepsiCo posters everywhere, except for in the final assassination scene. There's one Coca-Cola machine standing right behind Oswald, the fake Oswald, when the CIA see him, right? The whole setup is all... So they have like a... Yeah.
So, Thomas, didn't you just have a talk on Spartacus?
We did, yeah. I watched the whole damn movie 3 times in a row. And
Oh my
we
God.
did a whole decode of every little sort of feature that I could find in it. So I'm sure I missed a lot of it. I wish you would have been there for that
Oh, wow,
one.
I want to watch that. But yeah, did you discuss Trumbo?
No. I mean,
so like Trumbo, so like Andreas is saying, like, this movie was the first time in years that a director let him use his actual name, or he was able to just, like, you know, this movie was able to come out released, written by Trumbo. He had accepted 2 different Oscars for movies he had done, including Roman Holiday with what's her name, Breakfast at Tiffany's. Audrey Hepburn was going to be Kubrick's first choice to play Josephine in his Napoleon film. But yeah, no, Trumbo's a super interesting guy, and kind of connects to Hal Craig too, in the sense that I think that the same thing that Trumbo would do, writing these movies, with the way that they would kind of pass around the scripts and work together, like unaccredited, you know, to like just
There's a lot of evidence that he had at least major conversations with Woody Allen in the process of writing The Front, if not was gave him part of the script for The Front being Woody Allen's movie about the Hollywood 10 blacklisted artists, including Zero Mostel, an actual blacklisted artist who came out, and then they have a front artist. And so Woody Allen plays this shrewd actor like a Shakespeare, he's a facade for these Hollywood 10 who've been blacklisted, right? It's one of his best movies, actually, and it makes sense.
Now, my superficial understanding of the whole dynamic behind Spartacus was that Kirk Douglas fired the original director, right? So that means that because Stanley Kubrick was working on it early, but he didn't come on as the director originally, and he got kind of promoted to replace. And that was also my understanding of when he realized, like, I never want to work on another movie from now on where I don't have absolute full control from start to finish, and not just like another cog within this. Because I guess he was a control freak, and he wanted to make everything the way exactly as he saw it, and he wasn't able to do that with Spartacus.
Wouldn't you say that he was kind of compromising from the get-go just by doing such a, you know, that kind of production? Like, was he relating to that project in the first place, kind of like, well, I'll do this, I'll get it out of the way? Maybe he wouldn't have been so like religious in his rejection of doing that kind of movie if it wasn't for what his experience actually was. But I imagine going into it, he's like, I want to do more of my own thing. I'm going to do this thing, and then they'll let me continue. There's a bunch of directors that have stuff like that.
There's something that blows my mind about this, though, because Spartacus, I feel like from an objective standpoint, however ironic that sounds, but like from an objective standpoint, it is like an amazing, great movie. It was like the Gladiator of when it came out. Like, it truly is a good movie, cinematography, story, like everything about it. It's a great freaking movie. And imagine using that, like the experience of being a director on that movie, and being like, God, I hated that. What a horrible movie. I never want to do anything like that again.
I think The Rainbow Thief is like that for Jodorowsky, because it's just like, you know, you can see it's not what he wanted it to be, but it's still really good. You know, David Lynch, that's Dune for him. Like, Dune is the movie that's just like, he doesn't like the ending because the studio made him change it.
Lynch has emphysema. He can't go out of his house now. Don't smoke. Bad, dude.
Yep. He said that was
a thing,
though,
at the end of the movie, and I don't know if this is true, so YouTube don't get all angry, but if you want to look this up and prove that this is true or debunk this, it sounds kind of trueable. It's one of those things that I hate to be, you know, use Adam's adage, it could be true. No, it's my adage. I know it is. In the 3 years after the murder of President Kennedy and Lee Harvey Oswald, 18 material witnesses died. 6 by gunfire, 3 in motor accidents, 2 by suicide, 1 from a cut throat, 1 from a karate chop to the...
neck.
We could read the rest more. 3 attacks and 2 from natural causes. Oh, come on.
Define natural causes.
dude.
At the ripe old age of 37 for one of them, right?
What's up with this R2 unit, man? It's got a busted.
Where has
what?
all?
Oh.
I'm just gonna turn off my camera for a second. Is that any better?
Yeah,
Still
here you're
bad?
back.
I can hear you.
Hey, you read it, okay?
An actuary engaged by London Sunday Times concluded that on November 22nd, 1963, the odds against these witnesses being dead by February 1967 were 100,000 trillion to 1. But
Right.
and I'll just inject my own observation here, but they turned out to be 100%. Like the odds of this happening were 100%.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. No. That. They're not going to mention. What was his name? Jack.
Ruby?
Something Lawrence. No, the other. There's so many Jacks in this. There's so many Jacks. It's so weird. Like John himself is Jack.
I mean, I know that this is basically the premise of Minority Report and like the precogs, but it would be so awesome if you could actually have a meter that would show you the chance of like the president getting assassinated at any given moment, and you could just have people watching this freaking meter, and you could start to analyze like, oh, that's funny. Every time the Bush family comes into town, this meter just kind of like, it wobbles a little bit, but you could like start to isolate things that might not even really be planned out, but just the synchronicities are like wanting these things to happen. Like a king kill ritual is yearning to be, done on the world on its own right.
The gravity. But yeah, no, I'm thinking of Jack Allen Lawrence. We might get flagged for my saying that, but he's the guy that they attribute shooting Kennedy from the JFK from the sewer drain 15 feet away. And so the argument that the grassy knoll is kind of maybe intentional or unintentional, who knows, red herring is really strong when you look into that guy's story.
I feel like if once I start to accept the manhole cover version, I'm just as willing to accept the all shooters one, where it was like what 7 or 8 different people.
It's not actually a manhole. It's like the
it's like storm
gutter.
drain.
Storm drain, yeah, thank you.
But,
and the guy was covered in crap. There's an arrest record for him that day when he showed up at his car dealership that he just got a job at, and his boss called the cops on him because he showed up vomiting, covered in mud. And it's just like, dude, it's right there.
There was I don't know how accurate it was, but there was a video from like the 80s where a news reporter went there and actually there was a guy that was given tours. And the guy giving the tours, you could actually pay him whatever, and it was like a 4-hour tour, and he would like show you all the different places. And when you got to the manhole cover aspect of it, the way that it had to happen is that you actually had to lift the manhole cover up, because it's not like it had like a little retractable like door, like how to move it, take the shot, put it back on, and then leave, right?
No, nothing like that.
Here comes Oswald down the hall again.
You find that rifle just as fast as you people have been given, but I emphatically deny these charges.
Oswald has hustled through a doorway.
So
who emphatically denies
I'm gonna find
charges
the
or something
article.
like that? Who would I'm going to turn off my camera, but who emphatically denies charges after something like that if they want to be like the whole point was he's supposed to be this crazy guy who wants to be remembered in history even for doing something stupid, right? Why would you deny charges instead of taking that time to talk about communism? You know what I mean? Like, in what circumstance does a communist not talk about communism? That doesn't make sense.
You're
just
right.
Like Osama bin Laden, right? The one guy that they wanted to pin it on, he was like, "Oh, I would be taking credit if it was my work, but it's not my work."
Right, and that relates to what you're talking about earlier with the Bush family, because his connections to the Bush family were so direct. 9/11, was it 9/11 2010 or 11 when the lightning hit the bin Laden crane at the mosque in Mecca and it crashed through the ceiling, all those people died? Do you know about September 11th, like 2000, and I think it's 11?
Well, I do know that September 11th, 1960 is when Oswald was discharged from the U.S. Army.
Well, you guys know about this freaking crazy giant tragedy at Mecca on September 11th? Yeah, so it's during the Hajj. So it was during the people had done the pilgrimage.
The crawler crane collapse.
Yeah, and it was a bin Laden crane that crashed into the roof of this most sacred mosque in Mecca.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. 2015. I stand reflected, but yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's wild.
That's crazy. You can. There's footage of this. I'm not sure if you can still find it easily.
11th.
Yeah, but on the day of, like, people filmed from inside when the thing fell and like them trying to get out. And there's this shot, something that's been like, this is like ghostly, dude. Like, there's footage of somebody grabbing like a bag or their purse or something, and like they're on their way out, they're running away, and they reach back and they grab it, and then they get crushed. So it's just like
Oh my gosh.
yeah, but it was
Wow,
like that
this is
moment. You're
brutal.
like, dude, if you just didn't go back for your bag, you would have survived, kind of thing. Oh my god. Yeah. Yeah, it's totally
Materialism.
brutal. Yeah. That was filled with
Man,
people in there.
so September 11th, 1959 is when Lee Harvey Oswald was released from active duty in the Marine Corps. So there's a lot of September 11th syncs.
How many
even with
people
that.
died in that crane accident? If that shows up easily, I'd be interested to know.
Let me
237.
I think it might be. For
Oh,
real.
gosh.
Yeah.
Don't you dare.
Yeah.
No.
No, what is
Really?
it? What is it?
Hold on a second. No. 111 people, injuring 394 other people. Okay.
Oh, okay.
I
It
mean,
may have been
that's
also that I
worse.
saw like a first report or something. I don't know. But yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
probably the
that's
first
good.
were 200. That's probably the thing. It probably said 230 at 37 people at first.
I don't know. It's
Because
in
they can.
Stark
And
Cassandra.
as soon as they do, that's like the first thing. And then 13 days after the collapse was one of the busiest days of the Hajj pilgrimage, a stampede, killing 2,000 other pilgrims. Wow. 2,000 people, more people died in a Hajj pilgrimage stampede 13 days later by a factor of nearly 10.
Oh,
That's pretty crazy. But yeah, I don't know, the September 11th thing, and just also vehemently denying charges. Kurt, would you vehemently deny charges if you were Lee Harvey Oswald?
I don't know what I would do if I was Lee Harvey Oswald.
question.
The guy was a Discordian, right? How can you?
Yeah.
Is that?
I don't know. In hindsight, it's hard to get a good view, I think, of who exactly Lee Harvey Oswald was personality-wise, because so much has been covered up about just the whole situation. And it's understandable what the CIA's motivations were, to kill JFK, but Lee being the scapegoat, being that he was the scapegoat for the whole thing, I think a lot about.
Yeah,
go ahead.
There's Thornley, and he's a good source for getting an idea about Lee Harvey Oswald and beyond his testimony. But yeah, so there actually, Adam Go Rightly, I think he wrote more than one book on Thornley. What's his full name? Do you guys know? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Kerry Wendell Thornley.
Yeah, that sounds right. That sounds true. Yeah, but yeah, that guy was like buddies with Lee Harvey Oswald. So like he testified about it.
Okay, cool.
And yeah, but you're right. It is, for the most part, it's pretty shrouded from like general public view. And like the thing is, like, we have like Oliver Stone's JFK, and like people will watch Oliver Stone's JFK, and like you can learn a lot there, but that's not really like the full and what the full investigation showed, what he shows you. And that's why I always kind of have mixed feelings on Oliver Stone. Like, he did the World Trade Center movie too. Like, it's just, like I really like Peter Levenda's analysis of the whole thing, because like those guys that like they're all Jesuit priests, so they had their own bishops. They're all bishops, and they were like people that were in the JFK movie that like show up. I think like Joe Pesci's character probably, or whatever. They were like, they had like
the eyebrows,
yeah, they had a place, like a meeting place, but they were all bishops, and there's no congregation. So it's just like an excuse to be like, leave us alone, we're doing our thing, religious thing or whatever. But it looks like they did a lot of the planning disguised as bishops.
Yeah, David.
I wish they'd make a movie about that. Yeah, it's weird.
I got so like I mentioned, I've been working on a comic about JFK and Oswald for years, but I got a timeline of Lee Harvey Oswald's life. So anyone just thought he was like some random country bumpkin, but like he was born in New Orleans, moved to Texas, then to New York City, then back to New Orleans, then back to Texas. Then he joins the Marines, and through the Marines goes to San Diego, Jacksonville, Biloxi, El Toro. Then he goes to Japan, the Philippines, Taiwan, San Francisco, Fort Worth, back to New Orleans. You sense this trend here where like he always keeps going back to New Orleans, and New Orleans I believe, was where they had Civil Air Patrol and David Ferry, the guy with the weird eyebrows,
Yeah, yeah.
like the OGs of the Civil Air Patrol, which Lee Harvey Oswald also joined. So this is another weird link because Lee Harvey Oswald was a teenager at this point. Like he was a teenage runaway for a small moment in time and ends up joining the Civil Air Patrol as like his way to get away from his parents, and because his brother was like a Marine, and like I guess like he wanted to be like the brother, but he kept getting messed up. He kept getting kicked out of schools. They had to move out of a house at one point because he like came at his brother with a knife. So they kicked him out of a house where they were staying with a relative. So he ended up being this like reason to keep like jumping around. But so anyways, he runs away from home for a small amount of time, and yeah, he bops into like this organization that David Ferry runs, only to reconnect with a really weird David Ferry sort of thing with the JFK assassination decades later.
Whoa.
How far could that go back? Or was he just on a roster of like, hey, I know a troubled kid, we can probably he's in the Marines? Yeah, we know exactly where he's at. Bam, bam, bam.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Oswald.
That's but the thing that I thought was interesting in the movie is the idea that he didn't do it at all. Like, because he's actually too, like, the reason that they don't like him is he's too intelligent, and he's not taking to programming and reaction the way that they're antagonizing him for particular reactions he's not committing. And so even when they have to assassinate him before a trial, like the fact that he's dying in the police station, and they're like, well, we're sure that he did this. We're certain he didn't act alone. This guy, he's just denying it, and then he's dead instantly. It's like not even that he was trained to do it or that he was part of it at all at that point, perhaps.
Yeah. Well, it's weird. It's a playing card deck, right? So this is where it gets kind of creepy with like king kill type stuff, because you're like, you got Jackie, it's a Jack. You got John Kennedy, who's a Jack. Jack is surname, John. Right. And then you have Jack Ruby, and then you have Jack Allen Lawrence, who was likely the shooter who got the headshot. And so, yeah, it's kind of weird. Same.
Yeah, I loved how there were like 4 different angles of bullets in his body. You're like, yep, lone gunman here. Here you go, people. At this point, I talk about the Jake.
Sorry.
Well, did you say the driver got hit?
The driver got hit in the shoulder through the windshield. But yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. Go on.
Oh, no, it's okay. Yeah, with the JFK assassination, I talk about it a lot, but like I get a little burnt out with it sometimes because it's like it's a lovely, lovely, awesome conspiracy that definitely happened, but there's like just so many conspiracies out there. And I guess like the main takeaway, I guess, with talking about the whole conspiracy is that, well, it's like we are in a post-truth era in a way, but a post-truth era doesn't function optimally at all. And I think the takeaway from the JFK assassination is because it does make us question all of our assumptions about the way society is run. You can't really trust almost anything that you see, and even less that you hear in the world that we see. So how do you construct any sort of meaning in that sort of realm, and how do you build a society of trust when those situations happen?
Well, I can tell you, like,
but yeah, I think that's the main takeaway talking about.
No, I would just say like when like in Pi, when he's like, restate my assumptions, and he lists all these things, universe is made of numbers, whatever. Like data is like that. And like when you're like, my favorite kind of conspiracy theorist, like I'm a big fan of like Webster Tarpley, because like he's stacking up these points, and you're like, can you, like, is this verifiable? And then you have enough of those points stacked up, it begins to like speak for itself. And you don't, like, that's the thing I get about the Jack Allen Lawrence is I'm like, yeah, he was arrested that day. Yeah, he was covered in mud, he was vomiting, whatever. It's like, if these points check out, then you kind of got to like, how many bullets were found? Like all the like, where did they find those bullets? Like how many people were involved in this? Like just by those kind of facts, so.
It seems interesting also just because of all the changes, like Kennedy was making so many changes so quickly, and America wasn't so solidified into the hands of the OSS, WASP, CIA yet. I mean, it was, but they had to keep it. And this is a change of hands in such an interesting way because they're like, we actually have to put someone in to control the presidency itself. We can't just, it's that big of a deal.
Dude, we're literally looking at a page that says Spartacus Educational. I'm just saying, we got a show called Synctank. I got to point it out.
Yeah, we were just talking about Spartacus. That I'm trying to find this a link, but there was this like really interesting thread that I haven't been able to really make any answers to. But basically, that when Jack Ruby pulls up and allegedly, well, I guess not allegedly, but he shoots Oswald, right? One of the details that people seem to point out is that he had this dog named Sheba that was his like companion. Like he loved this dog, brought it everywhere. And when he ran up on Oswald like that, apparently he left Sheba in the car, like the car running, door open, and everything. And for whatever reason, everyone that got interviewed and talked about Jack seemed to make a point of saying Jack would never do that. Like he would never in a million years have left Sheba in the car or even brought Sheba with him if he knew he was going to be in a situation where like Sheba would be harmed or like not absolutely safe. So the fact that Sheba gets left in the car as he runs out to take out Oswald has been linked to like one of the many indicators of proof that it was like mind control or ... I don't know. That's where but it feels important enough, or maybe it's just a red herring that's been planted into the media. I don't know.
I would like to know the percentage of people when Jack Ruby shot Oswald just like basically breathed a huge sigh of relief. I wonder how many people did that, because however many people did that or how many people were actually involved in that. Just saying. I'm sure a lot of people were very relieved to see Oswald get killed. Like,
and Jack Ruby was almost certainly CIA or at least because he got in with the FBN right before there was an FBI or DEA or anything. He got in with the FBN because he got busted by none other than George Hunter White, who was the guy behind Operation Midnight Climax, who was a direct connection to Sidney Gottlieb. So Jack Ruby is literally 1 degree away from Sidney Gottlieb, the dirty trickster of like all these covert operations within the CIA. So I don't know. It's nuts that this one guy ends up being this linchpin. And Jack Ruby to me was the one removed connection that the CIA had to the underworld, because Jack Ruby kind of like had 1 foot. He knew cops, but he also knew, non-cops. He was literally in a secret society of Asia, like a Chinese secret society. He got into it, got like tattoos and everything, I believe. It's crazy. Like this guy has a wild backstory. He also personally knew William Donovan, who was, I guess, the guy that introduced the idea with Sidney Gottlieb, probably, of bringing like all sorts of like terror drugs into the military to use as truth serums. The one of the earliest names for these guys, I think pre-Bluebird, was Donovan's Dreamers. And that was in relation to them just like dosing them with mescaline until people were like literally pulling themselves apart from it. So all this, like, this is Jack Ruby in the thick and in the middle of all of this.
Huh. Yeah, interesting. I never heard the connections with Jack Ruby directly ties to, you're saying like prior to Bluebird. So you're not even talking about MK Ultra. You're talking about a CIA. What is it, an umbrella project?
Jack Ruby gets busted by George Hunter White at some point when he's running one of his clubs. I believe I think it was in New Orleans. It might have been in Texas, but he gets busted by George Hunter White, and George Hunter White is the one that's at the center of all these different operations that I just mentioned. So that, but essentially, he was one of the informants. Jack Ruby was an informant directly to George Hunter White, and from George Hunter White, you have a direct connection to Sidney Gottlieb, William Donovan, so many other major players in MK Ultra and others. So if Jack Ruby is also tangential to Oswald, I don't know, there's so many different aspects of this, not to mention the rumors. I don't know if it's proven that Jolly West ends up going and interviewing Jack Ruby, and then Jack Ruby starts going nuts in jail and starts first he goes through amnesia, and then he starts claiming all sorts of random things to the point where he can't even vocalize himself anymore. Like, he completely deteriorates in jail. So
was he in the mob?
He was mob tangential.
he was
Yeah.
influenced by the
Yeah,
mob.
I'm like Ruby's Italian last name, but
No, he was Rubenstein.
oh, okay.
Jacob Rubenstein, but he actually got teased and sort of people were prejudiced against him because of his Jewish name, so he changed it to Jack Ruby. But
It's just because the Reubens are funny.
Okay.
Like, you
Yeah,
know,
basically
every time I eat a Reuben, I'm laughing. You know,
for some reason, it's like I always get fishy. Sorry, I always get fishy because like one guy that owns like 17 restaurants in a city near me, his last name is Luke Casey, and it seems like it's always an Italian, and you're never sure. He's like, how many steps away from the mob is this guy?
So all right, is the internet working now? God,
Yeah.
'cause I wanted to say something for a minute,
Yes.
but that one's big. So the mafit is an Arabic word which means to tithe, and it has to do with being protected from tithing, and it goes back because Maimonides, at the time that the Spanish Arab Cordoba Caliphate was run, it was organized or it was governed by Jewish people. Like, so Maimonides was able to interact with Muslims and Christians and pagans, and he was just a doctor, right? So there is actually a tie. And if you look at the Sicilians, because we pushed this off onto Sicily, it's not completely true. Italy is definitely part of that connection, but these families who've been coming, a lot of them were nomadic families, and there were a lot of Jewish Sicilian families who were in the Mafia that ended up in the United States, right? And so we see this, like Larry David in the Confederacy. You know, he found out his great grandfather was a slave owner. You know, it's like, and people get confused about what that means, but basically what it means is like Jews are traveling all over the world, and they're historically involved in a lot of these things, and in places where there isn't any government yet, right? So a lot of these places where the mob have had trouble are places where they were there before the government really organized itself there, right? They've been there for so long, and now Nevada's kind of sprout up around them, you know. But you can do the same thing with Louisiana. Before New York, they were settling in all of the port cities, right? Because anywhere that they could be porters, they were interacting back and forth.
didn't Angela Davis have something like that happen too, where they like showed her ancestry and she got all tripped out by it?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Which is funny though, because you should expect that. Like, you know, I think we're kind of supposed to be processing generations of trauma or something. That's probably what we're supposed to be doing.
Totally. That's the thing. It's like Kamala's father claims that their ancestry goes back to an Irish slave owner who was in was that Jamaica? Is it? I believe he had a plantation in Jamaica. And then she's actually there was
noble,
down the line of him having been with people who were working slaves.
And we talked earlier about Cuba, but like the Mafia ran Cuba, and Juan Batista was Ruben Juan Batista. So he was also Jewish, and there's a lot of Jewish people that were Freemason, like essentially, like, even in New Amsterdam, it was a protected class in a time when a lot of other places were trying to kill off anyone of any difference. And so you look at, this is something that kind of is interesting to me because people get so upset at the Muslims, but like you look at the Spanish Inquisition and you can say, well, Christians aren't, like, they're capable of anything as bad as anyone else, clearly, during the Spanish Inquisition. Like, that's not saying a lot for the capacity of tolerance of Christianity. And you look at the Muslim Enlightenment period and you can say, okay, well, they're capable of anything. You know what I mean? They're capable of greater civility than can possibly be imagined by anybody. If you look at the way the world was at that time, tolerance, civility, hygiene, everything was better than anywhere else.
The Islamic alchemists were said to be like the most advanced of the alchemists, right? That's like the whole thing. And so I don't know all the details.
The origin of the homunculus, I believe, was Hassan. I can't remember. Hassan something or other. They're all Hassans though. Hassan Ilbayan or something. So he was the first guy to claim creation of a homunculus, and then also the Old Man in the Mountain, I believe, as Marco Polo wrote about, that was like the order of the Hashashins. I believe that was also like the first instance of like military imposed mind control. So yeah, they are capable of anything, and they were doing this stuff millennia ago.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, there's that idea. Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, I think what the argument is
brain controlled.
Yeah.
What constitutes mind control?
Oh, is it a question?
Was that what you said?
Fix that cable.
Yeah.
We didn't get you, Kurt.
Check 1, 2.
Yeah. Okay.
All of these individuals that are just subject to mind control. It's just like, I don't know.
Dude.
I'm talking to Old Man on the Mountain. He would drug fighting age men. So we're talking like 12 to 15-year-olds. He would drug them on hashish, and when they passed out, he would have them brought into the hollowed out inside. This is all based on Marco Polo writings. That they brought them to the hollowed out inside of a mountain, and inside the mountain they had literal rivers of milk and honey flowing, so that when the kid came to, this old man in the mountain would basically come to him surrounded by a harem of women and say, "You have died. I am God. This is heaven. And good news for you is I'm sending you back to earth. I'm going to send you back to life. And the only way you can get back to God and heaven and all these riches you see around you is that you have to do this one thing for me." And then they would knock him out on hashish again. He'd come to in the normal world. And the idea was that he would no longer have the fear of death because he's already dead. And he knows the one thing he has to do will bring him back to heaven. And he knows unequivocally that heaven is objectively real because he was there. He tasted it. He felt and that was, yeah. So I would say that constitutes some pretty hardcore military mind control.
Dude, my rabbi.
Awesome. I mean, awesome in a way.
Did David just say his rabbi did that to him?
No. I said he talked to me about that because I guess I don't know if this connects, but correct me if I'm wrong. But the word assassin, when we say assassin, has an etymological connection to hashish, and so there's these were people who would assassinate people, but they had this. Is that
the hashashin? Yes,
that's literally what you're talking about.
So
yes,
okay, yeah, hashish is like really refined marijuana. Is that what, or is that different?
Yeah, well, the OG hash, yeah, it's basically before they had dabs. Getting hash was the closest you could get to kind of like a concentrate.
Yeah. The truth is that this could make somebody else.
It's in the Count of Monte Cristo. He gets high on it all the time.
Right. If you wanted to make a lot of money with marijuana sales, if you were in that area, I probably shouldn't say this on a podcast because because it's worth some. But this isn't. I'm not talking about anything illegal. I'm saying if you go through all the proper channels, an illegal place, whatever. The hash that most people smoke nowadays, like bubble hash or like finger hash, or these kind of like. It's not like in the Moroccan style of like hash. The reason why it is the way that it is for shipping purposes, and they compress it with heat to make it like this chocolate bar thing. So like if you watch like Pink Floyd's The Wall, like that's what he's smoking, like, and that goes so well with tobacco. Like if you like that whole thing. So I'll tell you, if somebody wanted to make a lot of money, they would make it that way. And they would sell it at a dispensary, and they could call it like Moroccan style, whatever. Put the flower of life on the label or whatever you're gonna do, and it would do really well because it's so unique. It's not like these other forms of hash that
This might sound really ignorant because this is my only experience, but this one time we found me and my friends, there was a Moroccan guy that was like stuck at the airport and had a whole bunch of hash, and he couldn't get onto the plane. He was flying back home. And he was just like, bring me somewhere cool. And I've got all this. And he had a lot of hash on him. And he was saying that the way that a lot of the people in Morocco were doing hash is they would just run up and down. And he was maybe messing with us, but they would run up and down the fields naked. And they would wait for all of like the particles just to like get all up in, their armpits and everything. And by the time they were done running, they would just kind of scrape it out of all their crevices and put it together, and that was how a lot of them got the hash.
That sounds true.
It does sound true, and I mean, so if you ever find a little hair, that might be a cube in your hash, yeah. Anyways, if someone was saying like this is original Moroccan hash, the first thing I'm thinking is just a dude totally naked running down a field, like, I'll take the lab. I'll take the lab concentrate.
Oh wow, yeah. Well, that's just there's a market for that. Someone's got to get in that. It's like, it's up there with like eggnog year round. When you come out with a nog for all seasons, that's when the dairy mafia is going to come after you, man. They're going to be like, you trying to sell eggnog in the summertime? Get the hell out of here. But you could corner that summertime eggnog market, I'm
going to try to reboot my Wi-Fi. So if anyone has a subject they want to take over for 5 minutes, I'll be ready.
Oh well, I guess we were talking earlier, and Andreas was like, no, don't. You're not allowed to talk. You have to save it for the show. But that I have been trying to do an AI generated album with Aleister Crowley poetry that he wrote, and trying my damn best to find the right genre that makes it so it doesn't just produce objective garbage. Because
Wait, are you you're trying to do it like in the style of Crowley?
No. I'm
You
taking
could just feed in the
Crowley
actual
poetry.
Yeah,
and I'm trying it as like bluegrass and 1970s prog rock and like lo-fi trap, trip hop. Like I'm trying all these different genres, but my main goal is to not change the lyrics one iota. Like just have them be exact lyrics.
You could probably do Clouds Without Water, or you could do there's those 3 collected works of his writing that's like different ages of his life, maybe more of the stuff when he was like in his 20s or whatever. Okay. That would probably work pretty well.
I wanted to say though that like I've been actually surprised at how consistently bad every single Crowley lyric song AI tends to generate. And then today I was thinking, what if there was a Morals and Dogma and Drums and Bass album? And dude, every single time I put an Albert Pike poem into the AI as lyrics, it was kind of fire, like every single one. So I wonder if this means that like objectively Albert Pike, as in, you know, brevity is the long blah 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 wit, but like maybe Albert Pike legitimately is more occult. Like he is cooler and better than Aleister Crowley. Because objectively, even AI is like, yeah, like this dude's actually onto something. Crowley is so verbose, and I don't know.
He has a range, and so not all of his stuff is like it can be vastly different. But like White Stains would be good for like a pop type thing or like a soul thing because it's hypersexual, and so like I could be wrong, but I think it was the first 300. Might be exaggerating, but I feel like it was the first 300 copies that were privately published by Crowley. He splooged in each one of those copies himself. And if you have one of those copies of White Stains that's like erotic poetry or whatever, and it has that real stain, like that's his DNA. Like that's worth a lot of money. And in fact, I think the drummer for Tool had a copy of the original copy of that because his what's his name, Danny. This is a Tool drummer. Danny Carey? Yeah, not Dana Carey. Danny Carey. He had his original, like his website used to just all be first editions of Crowley books that he owned, like photographs of his own books and just like showing it off. Like that was all that was there. Like you go, you're like, oh, the Tool drummer's website. What's he got? It's just like nothing but Crowley. Not even any other authors. It was just like, this is my Crowley collection. It's like, you know.
But he should have had Morals and Dogma instead, is what I'm getting at.
Oh, okay. If it's for AI musical purposes, I suppose. Yeah, but
right. But I guess the underlying thought there is that because of how much better it is objectively and consistently, that there might actually be more value inherently in
what poetry did Albert Pike do? I thought you were just talking about.
I have no idea. I didn't even realize he had a lot of poetry. He's got a lot of poetry. I just
really
on a whim, I was like, I wonder if Pike did anything good. And he's got some great dude. There's one that sounds like it's a modern country song. I'm gonna make it a modern country song. That's what I was messing with before I went and took my dog out before I got on here. Like it's seriously like my whole project has gone from being like an Aleister Crowley AI album, which I feel is like, you know, summoning Crowley, or I was going to come up with some cool theme around it. And now it's going to end up being drum and bass and Morals and Dogma or something.
Well, you heard his actual recordings of like the Crowley surviving. Like I have it on vinyl actually. I have like every Crowley recording, whatever.
Yeah, they issue it all the time on like purple vinyl and stuff.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Mine's white, but yeah, it's creepy. It is creepy. Some of them, the Enochian stuff especially, is creepy. But like the one that he has about the Independence Day for America on the day of their independence and ashes to ashes, dust to dust. That's so freaking weird. Yeah, I don't know, but it seems like he could do something with those recordings in and of themselves too. Because one thing to just have his words, but it's his creepy freaking voice, dude. He's like,
you think that would summon anything if you just played him on a loop?
I think I may have at times, yeah. Like I've played that at parties and stuff, like just to like throw it in and this or something.
Smoke those choke-a-lies while you got. Find the time and fires in the night. Deleted footage shows shadow organizations dancing hashes in caves filled with milk and honey. CIA, take out JFK and the KFC. Golden Circle sells Pepsi for free. Forget the madness, come waltz with me. Come waltz with me, come waltz with me. Have some Coke and some Pepsi for free.
Strangely
Plastic
comforting.
metal drums be our melody. In the 7-Eleven, come waltz with me.
I like it.
It might be my favorite one so far. Thank you.
That's pretty good. What was the song in Eyes Wide Shut that when it starts, it's also a Nymphomaniac, that Waltz? What is that? Something Waltz? Do you know what I'm talking about? It's like the first song in Eyes Wide Shut when it first starts. I forget what that's called.
You're the expert on that by far. Out of the three of us,
I'm so used to
Waltz
watching it
number
with Leonard
2
Cohen.
by Boan.
Is that what it is? Yeah, thank you. But yeah, this guy, dude.
Waltz number 2 by Boan Vidinov. Yeah.
No, man, it's too much. Like I could take my
Sorry,
issues.
my internet's
with-
all crazy.
All right, so since we're in a room of Crowley experts, what have I've read one of his. I think the Book of Law, whatever. Yeah, I've.
Did you burn your copy after you're done?
No,
because if you didn't, that's bad luck, dog. You're supposed to burn that book. It's like a CIA document.
It was
Yeah.
PDF. So
Can't you tell? Can't you tell? Can't you look at his life? Yeah, you should. He burned a copy of it. That's the way he did it.
Okay.
Yeah, what
Yeah,
happens if it's a PDF though? What do you do?
I don't know. I
burned my computer. I set my computer.
You
on
delete
fire.
it.
Here, the thing that really gets me about, well, at least the magic community surrounding Crowley. I love magic. I love it as a topic. I love discussing it. I think to a degree it's like real, but like when you get into all these, books that are supposed to, summon demons or, symbolically / physically, it's like, there's some level on it. It just feels so high on the bullshit meter. Even if you like go out and do it, it's like how successful was Crowley in summoning Thoth?
Dude, I'll tell you what though, dude. You need that meme with like marketing wants you to know the difference between these pictures, and you say these are the same picture. You need the Goatia, probably pronouncing it wrong, but the book, demon summoning book. And you need Edward Bernays' The Engineering of Consent. I think that those kind of go together because there's some crazy demonology happening, man. I'll tell you what, corporations, demonic.
Like I wouldn't consider.
I was thinking about George Bernard Shaw this week. Sorry, I was thinking. I don't know if you got me through, but George Bernard Shaw, because David said last week that someone had told him, when I do a sync. Like, yeah, why wouldn't they do that? And a lot of people say, why would you do that? Well, that's also JFK's one of his last speeches. Is like, some people say, why? And I say, why not? Other people say, why not? Right? And he's quoting George Bernard Shaw. And George Bernard Shaw has a very large, quote about, innovators and like, why not versus why, right? So
right. Yeah. We're in an interesting
you see things and
circumstance
say,
right
well,
now.
but I dream things that never were, and I say, why not? Back to Methuselah.
Yeah. It's a compulsive thing that people would say over the years when sometimes for certain people when I show them a sync film and they go, why would they do that? Why would they do that? Because if the things are aligning to a degree that's giving them that cognitive dissonance, sometimes that's where they would go to. But yeah, I had a friend who was an actual music producer. He was in the Lawgivers. His name is Paul Holleran, and I told him what I do, and he was just like, yeah, why wouldn't they do that? I was like, okay. Yeah, there's more to the story, but
yeah. Now, if I may interject a question, if it's not if it's not answerable, I get that. So, but like if the goal is to summon and communicate with a demon, or like is the idea actually to I guess transcend into another parts of reality, and these things could be present for everyone present to see, or is it something that's supposed to just trigger something internally and just be like,
it's a joke actually, because you're up in it. Like there's like if you're talking about like because he's relating to the Klippo, like he's basically like this is in your head. Like this is how do you navigate this crap in your head? Like this is like we're all there, for all intents and purposes, they've taken over the lower worlds. Kabbalistically, you'd say they rule through the 12 diagonals extending from Gevora, like they enter through Gevora, and they're alien to the Shefa, they're alien to the emanated flow, but they influence our consciousness. And as we move through time, like that's what the fall basically is described as Kabbalistically in the Zohar, is this kind of like funnel that gets tighter and tighter and tighter, and to the point where when it finally reaches a point where it's actually going to block off, the whole thing explodes. So it's basically like a time bomb of consciousness or something. And so it's also, Blavatsky really liked that idea because it helped communicate how nothing is for naught, like no sacrifice, no anything is for nothing, because it's all moving towards, like, even if something would be considered, the Sitra Achra is from the outside worlds, like that would have its part to play in the development, because if it was like the strain that it creates actually like allows for the transformation to happen ultimately. So it's like everything is contributing towards that in that way. And so some people, I'm sure elite, whatever, relate to that and they see that as like a justification. But there's also the idea of like God's judgment. Like you can have sweet judgment or you can have bitter judgment. And it depends on like the way in which you're relating to everything that you're doing, which is what your actions are attached to. You know what I mean? Like, in other words, like this is a definition of karma, where karma isn't necessarily like a like action reaction thing. The way that we generally think of it is that the karma in the moment, everything that's implied to yourself about what it is, who you are, connects to what you do. So if you like are like confining yourself, if you're acting in such a way that you're like trying to like get what you can be sneaky, like Rainbow Thief style, like that's the reality that you get to experience. Like you are in that paradigm and you project that paradigm, and that's like that is basically a form of hell. So like that's like another explanation of like the Bardos in a way. It's like if the Einstein talked about this too. People will criticize him, but I like this idea that that life like is kind of like, as you move through life, the more that you can relate to yourself, like the more you can connect to, like you see how everything's interrelated, that's like expands your definition of self, and then your actions like extend from that. So like karma is not like necessarily like, oh, you did this bad thing or you did this good thing and now something good or bad is going to happen to you in relationship to that. It's more like in this moment, everything you're assuming about yourself, that's the karma. You know what I mean? It's kind of hard to explain that, but
yeah, it's like both a singularity and a plurality at the same time. Karma. Yeah. That's the best way I'm interpreting that. Well, thank you for that. Yeah, thank you for that thorough answer. There was something else. Oh, okay. Okay. I guess this is kind of related. So I feel like with the assistance of psychedelics, which I think we have friends that are into that. No, I very much feel you can get to that line where you're like bordering on the ether. You're seeing the inner reality and you're like, oh fuck, what do I do while I'm here? It's like, because everything is just completely dissolved into that experience, and like trying to comprehend, I guess, some sort of divine messages while you're in that space, and everything is just noodly and all over the place. So like with that being said, it's like I feel like I've confronted more things like more archetypal than nature. And so like, yeah, there will be things that are like archetypal, and there will be things that are godlike and saying, hey, you should be doing this with your life. This is how you need to put yourself in order. But like, it's never been down to a science of like, oh, I spoke to this demon here, here, and here, and here. And that's where like all this demonology, sometimes it's like, it all just seems like, are we helping people by trying to say like, oh, okay, you can summon this demon by doing this? If it's a joke, yeah, that's a funny joke, yes. But
I've heard maybe jokingly, but someone refer to the DSM as the demon summoning manual. that the DSM, in a way, it only describes patterns of behavior. It doesn't describe any sort of cures or techniques or anything. It's literally just a bunch of categories that's like, hey, if someone's acting like this, you can kind of call it this thing, but it's not. And people say like it'll be a diagnosis, but really it's just a category of a description so that someone
Right.
can write it off on an insurance form. So it's
Exactly.
like, oh, you're 109885B or whatever. And I think that there's almost a very real similarity between demonic behavior and demons and the DSM, and that the descriptions and like the drawings and stuff, I think they represent like the underlying thing that's actually happening, but they're not. It's like the forest for the trees, right? Like people can keep
Right.
drawing a map over and over again, but it never is going to represent the real thing that's happening, even though that real thing might actually exist. But like, does a forest exist? I guess it's hard to really conceptualize because you only get to experience a forest like a little bit at a time, right? Just like you might only be able to experience a demon or a demonic force a little bit at a time and never as the whole.
Right. There was a copy of the DSM that my ex had. 'Cause she got a PhD in psychology, and I forget exactly what year it was, but I know it's sometime in the last 10 years her copy was. But it said at the beginning of it, there's like an introduction, and it was like if enough people exude an example of the neuroses, that if enough people exude it, then it's no longer considered a dysfunction. And I thought that was kind of weird, like, because they're like basically
Mass
like,
depression.
yeah, what's that?
I said mass depression. This is where we're
Mass
headed.
depression. I thought you said, "Can I ask a question?" And I was like, "Oh, what you got?" But no, but that's it. Well, totally. Well, that's the thing, and then that brings up the Krishnamurti idea that being well adapted to a profoundly sick society is no measure of good health. So like so the DSM kind of like tells you in the first place that it's like, exactly like you say, Thomas, that it's like it's not just giving you diagnoses, it's giving you like what are these the neuroses, psychological conditions, whatever. And but people use that in a way like psychiatrists will use that differently than a psychologist. They
they'll
can
be like,
prescribe
well,
medication.
it's official. Like that's kind of
Right.
like if you can get someone to say, oh, that's DSM, whatever. You're on page 9, right?
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
there it is. I've been looking for that, but really all
Yeah.
they did was just said, oh, the behavior that you're exhibiting would fit into this category. It's not like an actual diagnosis, like someone just found out what was wrong with you and here's how you
Right.
fix it.
Right. Well, what got me about that is that I was like looking at that and I was like, wow, if you say so, it's critical mass. What? So I was just like, is this one of the few places where we have because there's different people have different ideas around what a democracy is, right? But if you're talking about majority rules, I guess we have that in relationship to sanity. Like at least according to the DSM, it's look, if enough people are insane, it's not insane. So you're like, oh, I guess majority rules, right?
Dude, I mean, I'm thinking of Four Agreements by the Toltec Wisdom Guide by Don Miguel Ruiz, and
Yeah.
one of his things that I took away from that book was about how reality is just like a shared illusion. That if everyone shares in like a universal Maya, basically, then like we collectively decide what that kind of is in a way. So I think that's kind of what you're describing, right?
Right. And that's the thing. I talk a lot about like non-localization because when we're developing as children, when we localize ourselves, we're like, this is my place in time and space. Because like you can't see, like when your cones develop when you're first born, and then all these senses emerge, and you're like trying to like that becomes something that we keep with us throughout life. So I think that's one of the arguments that they'd make in psychoanalysis is that everybody has birth trauma. We have different degrees of birth trauma, but we're all affected by it. But birth trauma is just the first trauma, right? So it's just saying like when you're born, it's just because you're not localized in that state. And so as you localize, so there's something very uncomfortable about not being able to localize yourself. And so, yeah.
Right.
What do you
Well,
think,
the
Thomas?
exception to that rule, though, is that allegedly in Project Monarch, the first trauma would be artificially induced by an amniocentesis needle so that the programmer would have absolute full control over exactly when your first trauma would be and not have to leave it up to something else. And there was another thing, too, I was thinking about that the human birth probably, according to like a wild theory that Manly Palmer Hall, I think, puts forth, and it might have even been on like some Rosicrucian thing, but that the original human birth was way more traumatic, like trillions of times more traumatic, because they theorized our entire skin was our eyes, and that it was only after the invention of fire and when we completely were surrounding ourselves in light at all times, that over time our sense of sight had to retreat from being all over our body because it was so overwhelming that it had to kind of like retreat back and specialize itself into a different area where you could kind of close your eyes. And I don't know if he was talking about like humans walking around with but like that, like the original things that we came from, it was just all eyes everywhere.
Oh, weird. So that
I can vibe
yeah,
with that.
sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I think that's why it's a very common like experience. You know, if you get in, yeah, if people are tripping, maybe not as much in probably on LSD. I don't know, but yeah, if you're sure, especially like with like the mushroom trip, it's very common to see like eyes just like either coming at you or just like
Oh, yeah.
drooping and dripping out of stuff. Like very extremely common for me, or just like seeing eyes in like whatever patterns you're looking at. Faces, of course, I think it's a very common one.
Like
but,
Alex Gray piece, he would do that often. Yeah.
Exactly. Only other thing I wanted to mention is like, no, this is where it feels like you can be schizophrenic sometimes, but literally, so I got into, you know, I'll just call it dream state. I got into dream state, and like I got this feeling that a person was trying to like enter back into my life. Weirdly enough, like I feel like there's some weird like plane of communication, and like this is a person I haven't seen for like over a year, and then like after I came out of that, it was the next day that I saw this person, like just out of random chance. Well,
you think how random is random? That's a good Burroughs quote.
Yeah, how random is random? No, it's like I think there's such a deep level to all of our consciousnesses that there is, and we don't always have access to like that level of our consciousness that is trying either to move and communicate with other people. It's just like, I don't know. I am a huge believer in telepathy now. Like, yeah, I think in altered states of consciousness, you could decide like, hey, I'm going to communicate with this person, and you do it. And then like, I don't know, whatever, they send you a text message. I don't know, crazy shit like that. I think it happens all the time, but
well,
I could.
I mean, yeah. I think that it would be weird if reality was truly linear and like purely chronological, and that the way that we just happen to perceive things as linear and chronological is the one real way and like the real truth. If anything, it seems like it would be the exact opposite, because we already know how great our limitations are. So it seems like that's just one extra limitation. Like our little processors just don't have the firepower, I guess, the horsepower in order to truly break something down in a non-linear way. But I mean, it seems that reality might not be linear, and if that's the case, it answers all of like the supernatural phenomena in my mind.
Right, and that's a Platonian idea, right? So like the idea that like he spoke to the archetypal realm, and that you never really learn anything. So to compartmentalize something isn't necessarily true knowledge or learning. It's like almost like substitute reality or something, because the knowledge is all innate, and as you have like a bit of knowledge that you can like contain, and you're like, oh, I know this thing. Like as soon as you do that, you're kind of dividing something that you are like initially you're
making a DSM manual.
Yeah, it speaks to like energy and stuff. It's like, and what I was thinking something really trippy of what you were saying earlier about the energy thing, because it's like, you know, like if you're relating to like the whole of human history, and you're like, look at developmentally, like what happened with human beings. Couldn't one make kind of the argument that like the grand cycle of all of that is kind of contained within every individual life, no matter how long they live or whatever it is, just the nature of the dynamics of what's taking place? Because you could argue that, like, you know, in the same way that we developed over the course of time, you could be talking about like what you're talking about, or like sex at dawn or something. Like different people speculated about it in different ways, like what early humanity was like. But there's like this non-localized consciousness idea that we weren't like, and it was just everywhere. And then we kind of like everything went to one place. But Freud, and he didn't come up with this. This is a much older idea. When he talked about when we're infants being promorphously perverse, which is widely misunderstood because of how people relate to that. But the idea is that we have one energy, that there's just this one energy, and that energy gets distributed into different places in different ways. And that for the infant, that energy is everywhere. So like their sensation is different than our sensation. And like we could like access that state through like meditation or something, but it's closer, like us when we're first born, it's like as close as it can be to our natural state if it wasn't for birth trauma. Because like just the act of being born, like if you were to look at the baby in the womb, like whatever their consciousness is, it's like it's everywhere. There's no single point. And so there's this idea that it goes to our brain, goes into one point. That's like, you could say our medial parts of our brain, like our pituitary and our pineal or whatever, that these are like basically like a cerebral erection. And then also just like the tip of your genitals, whether you're a man or a woman. This idea that energy collects and gets distributed.
Or both.
Sure. Yeah. But there's no found hermaphrodites in nature where they have both organs, but yet, I guess. But there's other things, which is a topic that ties back to the Olympics. But I'm just saying, like, there's this idea of being non-localized as an infant, and then everything kind of going to its place in your consciousness, and then you kind of hold that together, and then ego's like secondary to that. So like we will contract and expand in relationship if we're insulted or complimented or whatever, but that's like the mind-body complex, right? But like beyond all of that, if you're just talking about the pure physicality of it, one could make the argument that like the whole of human history is like expressed in the microcosm of an individual's own life.
Well, that same premise is in like animal pack mentality. Like there's a concept that when you're in a true, like a wolf pack, that the wolf pack itself has its own consciousness, almost in like a Gustave Le Bon crowd kind of way, but at a much more primal level. So that just you thinking about something or seeing something, that it goes beyond this nonverbal communication or like just them being able to pick up and like pheromones, but that they literally kind of think as a big pack. So if one sees something, they all see the thing. And that, I guess, functionally, how they're communicating all that, even if it's like very mundane and just imperceptible, it alone kind of constitutes what this kind of like global consciousness is. So yeah, if you get like a bunch of babies in a room, maybe they could hunt for you or something.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. Psychic babies. We need like that sounds like a Philip K. Dick book that I haven't read. But
Or
what if
really
you could train
good video
smart
game.
babies and then have them kind of connected to you?
Bro, if they could train smart babies, don't you think someone would have done that already?
Well, someone
what I
probably
mean,
is doing it,
America?
right? The aliens.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was making fun of the educational system.
No.
The other day, I got a joke. B.F. Peterson, a dear friend of mine who I shouldn't have mentioned the name of, but that's all right. It's okay. I'm just kidding. He's a great guy. He posted 22 hours ago Kamala's VP pick, and it was Waltz, who is the governor of Minnesota. So I just thought it was a joke, and I was like, ha ha ha, that's a good one. That would be hilarious. You know what I mean?
It's one of the
you
ones
got
that's been
me.
discussed for days, and I'm getting completely alternate explanations of what happened with Shapiro, whether it was that he made the decision or whether or not they flipped it on him. But it seems like it's more in the direction of like that he made the decision, but I don't know.
I mean,
but
it's
yeah,
an old
All
white
right,
guy, but like
The second comment, though. The second comment.
looks
that's
like
pretty
Warren
good.
Buffett from Timu. It does. It totally does look like Warren Buffett
right.
from
Well,
Timu.
there's a reason why I really dislike this guy. Even if I would want to like him, I can't, because
yeah.
his administration had that snitch hotline. And I remember hearing about that at the time and just being totally disgusted by it, like people
Dude.
turning in their neighbors for
Well,
if you had a gathering. all the way
nobody in
from
Minnesota
March
likes
till
him.
November. Yeah, it was
I'm
March
in,
till
I'm
November.
in Minnesota, and
it was like-
everyone thinks it's like the most evil possible person that's ever been in government, except we have Omar, so there's a lot of weird stuff in Minnesota. But basically, he's, very Sharia, and I was wondering about this, like the synchromysticism of it, because like a waltz is in 3/4. This election's called in the third quarter. Is there something like a waltz dance?
Did you just say that because you know that it's an anagram for that Harris Waltz is an anagram for Sharia laws if you put a Z at the end of laws?
I didn't, but that's perfect. I love you, David.
Yeah.
No, I didn't know that. That makes perfect sense, though. The other thing is the waltz is from Vienna, and I was going to probably talk to Raph about this because I wonder the siege of Vienna, right? It's this big war where Vienna is sieged by the Muslims, and they end up Austrian afterwards, right? But an inversion of that, you could say, is Minneapolis, which was a Scandinavian settlement that is now turned into one of the most proud Muslim prayers at 5 o'clock in the morning. They have it's Masorettes. It's basically Saudi Arabia in Minneapolis, right? To an extent.
Also, it would be helpful to think of this too and like reframe it as not why would there be an anagram that matches up? Why wouldn't there be an anagram that matches up?
Why wouldn't
right?
there be? Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Because I Dare to Dream
there is.
hasn't been. I don't know. Does anyone have any thoughts on waltzing or on Sharia? Or like what do you think about that? Does anybody thought anything? I think the Timu point was clear.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I'm sure there'll be more to come with all of that. Like this is the thing is I'm looking.
I think he's gonna be. Isn't
yeah.
he's? I think he's chosen. I think it's like they did it. Isn't he like confirmed now as the thing? He's gonna be like she's chosen him.
I think he's chosen. Yeah, that's that. Yeah, that's what it looks like. Unless if they do what Alex Jones says they're going to do and just completely flip it at the convention and give it to Michelle, even though Michelle just wants to sip margaritas and be left the freak alone. But
yeah.
I honestly, it seems like that might be in the better interest of our country is to like force somebody to be president, someone that didn't even enter the running, didn't go through any of the process, but the populace just says you need to be the president, and you can't deny that. Like that almost seems like the ultimate jury duty. That's the ultimate draft, is for the entire country to say you lead.
Thomas, I think you just came up with a good movie idea.
Yeah.
At the very least,
I'm a proponent. I think the best presidents have all been presidents that weren't even elected. That's just my personal opinion. We needed to bypass the stupidity of populism and actually in order to get to the actually good people.
Well, I would love if someone can shoot this one down a little bit, because I'm sure there's really valid criticisms of it. But there's this Thomas Sowell philosophy, which I'm going to butcher to all hell. But basically, it goes that if you're on a cruise ship out in the middle of the ocean and the captain dies, do you want the populace? Do you want all of like the cruisers that have got them the yardstick margaritas around their necks? Do you want them to also get a vote in who becomes the next captain? Or do you want it to be relegated to just the crew, and that only the crew should be able to vote on who the next captain is?
As long as there's culpability, but who's going to do the oversight?
Right, but I mean, it's like everyone
Australia,
might vote for the party animal to end up being the captain because he's the most popular one on the boat. When maybe you just really need someone that knows how the boat works, and that's kind of the premise of like the Electoral College, a la like presidents that get elected that didn't necessarily get elected.
Right, but aren't you describing the issues with equity as like Kamala loves to talk about equity? I watched a series of clips of her talking about equity being more important than equality in certain ways, and just trying to make that clear or whatever. People have different ideas of equity, but it's a principle of compensation. And it's just kind of like this, like, it's funny because we're supposed to have that like with our law, but do we? Like, it's all these things are like, in an ideal world, maybe we could do this, but we don't live in that world. So it becomes another matter. That's like my issue with a lot of like the COVID mandate stuff. It's like, well, if people all did this thing exactly the way that they're supposed to do it, and that was the way it was, but that's not what people are going to do. So why would you institute it when you just know that is not going to happen? It's not realistic,
Yeah. I wish our electoral college actually served its function, but it just seems nowadays it's just not necessary middleman for the populace.
Don't you think it does? I feel like
no.
That's the beauty of it.
It does. It makes a slight.
So like if you had the electoral college, Trump would win. If you had the popular vote, Trump would win. And if you had the electoral college, then at least you have a system to stop misinformed masses from making decisions for themselves. Because you've already selected the people that you trust to make your decisions for you. So you have a perpetuated bureaucracy.
So every I forget my terminology, but I'll say electorate. Every electorate, every representative, they are bound to their candidate in most states now. It wasn't always that way in American history, but this is one thing that did change a little bit over time. You used to actually be able to change your vote like responsibly if it called for that. It very rarely happened. I think it happened a couple times early on, but now most representatives, they will get penalized if they change their votes. They will lose their seat. So what ends up happening is popular vote essentially is still the system that we have at the end of the day. It's like it's a complete fugazi. That's the best
my
way
contention with that is, we both live in places where there are large troopers and old order, new order, Mennonites, etc. People that don't vote, that have 140 kids or 140 grandkids rather. They have 15 kids, right? Huge communities of people that would vote that don't, and instead you have 30, 40, 50 deceased people's voting ballots sent in the mail to the same address and filled out. You know, this is
Right, but
happening
yeah,
all over.
I went through a giant list of those. It took me hours upon hours when Biden was elected, and in every case, I could find the spouse and that they died within a year, or within, you know, there's a time frame in which if your spouse dies, you can vote on their behalf.
That is the
And
most
so
leftist thing I never knew. Thank you. didn't know
I
that.
had to stand reflected on that because I
You can vote for your dead spouse for how long? I want to know this because that
Yeah,
could be
you
like
can look- you
that's a
can
Netflix
legitimately-
series waiting to happen. It was 90 days
Right.
before the election. before January.
Do you
Yeah.
do you think legitimately dying would cause anyone to change their political stance? Like people would go from Democrat to Republican simply through the act of dying. Like the second they're a ghost, they're like, "Damn, I should have been a Democrat."
Well, how is their spouse? You know,
No, it's
what
not.
is
It's
their-
not like Mormonism.
I was
Dude.
thinking like Ghost Dad. You know, like
Hey.
Bill Cosby dies and he's like, "Damn, I guess I am a Republican."
But speaking to the
That does
electoral
actually make sense
college,
because if you're brain dead,
Yeah.
oh snap.
ooh, Ghost Dad. I don't want to watch Ghost Dad again. I can't. You're talking about Bill Cosby, Ghost Dad.
Yeah.
You just conjured that. We're talking about conjuring demons. You just did it.
I like the one where the guy is the dad who doesn't want to hit the skunk and he becomes the robot that looks kind of like R2D2, but he's made out of a spaghetti strainer. You know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't know if I know that one.
Oh, maybe I would.
Oh,
I mean,
it's-
come on, you can't just say that and then leave. You know, you gotta like find what freaking movie this is.
Yeah, a spaghetti strainer.
The spaghetti. No, if Kennedy gets 34% of the vote, he could win through a contingency election. And so, as far as I can tell, that's something. And independents have 51% of the parties right now. We got like what 27 something percent. Like Republicans and Democrats are outnumbered by independents dramatically for the first time in American history. So anything is possible. And I can tell you 10 ways in which the polls are freaking totally rigged. Like
I think
it's overt.
Oh yeah, like in 2016 it was very clear like there was a lot of polling bias, and a lot of it probably was like bias with intent, but some of it was.
They were allowed to. They're complete. The DNC is absolutely like that's why they're in a difficult position, because with Bernie, Debbie Wasserman Schultz testified about this, that they were in every right to sabotage their own campaign, and they did that with Bernie. They would go to the extent that they would literally flip the numbers between Bernie and Hillary in the early primary days, and when the results were actually read that Hillary had won the different states and the delegates announced it, you had people behind multiple states holding signs saying Bernie won this state, and they were allowed to do that. It's legal to rig the elections in the primaries. That's why when people get into all the logistics around was the presidential election rigged, I'm just like, dude, it's heads I win, tails you lose, because they got the freaking their chosen candidates in the first place, and the Democrats would have rather had Donald Trump than have had Bernie Sanders, because Bernie Sanders was really the winning candidate. Like he was the one that if you put everything into that, he would have gotten it. And I think he was promised his healthcare bill. I've talked about this a lot on the show, but you know, I think that they said we'll give you this if you go along with this, and then they never even gave him that. And he's just like, I don't know what's going on with him now. But now it looks like the Democrats would much rather have Trump than have RFK Jr. But RFK Jr. is in a bit of a different position than Bernie was, because he's getting it from both sides of the aisle in a different kind of way, like with the media, you know. And so yeah, I pose the question to people when I'm tabling, like I table for RFK at a farmer's market every Sunday. And the way I pitch it to people is like, just pretend like theoretically RFK Jr. does not exist. And there was a candidate that was going after the corporate capture of our agencies and had like a cohesive plan to do that. How do you think that the media, which is owned by those very corporations, would respond to them? Do you think that they would have like $1 billion super PAC that would just, you know, constant putting everything towards smearing that person? So for me, I think that is RFK from everything that I've seen. I think, but you know, people are left to make up their own minds. Yeah.
This is it. I'm sorry. It's called "And You Thought Your Parents Were Weird." And his dad dies, and it's like their like engineering science project is to resurrect their dad as a robot. Super
I want to
underrated.
see the robot. Can you find it?
Yeah, I can. Hold on. Also,
This is
just wanna hear him
important.
say,
Father. So what? He didn't care about us.
That's not true. He loved you.
Oh, yeah? Then how come he killed himself?
No, wait, here it
Dad
comes.
always said no bugs, no bites.
You can do it, bro.
Wait, what actor was that? Who's the older brother or whatever? That guy.
Oh, hey kids, I'm your father.
Stop!
Newman!
That's it. I can't play the music because I know that's how they're gonna get me. But oh, here we go. They'll talk.
Testing. Hi, boys. Well,
Hi, boys.
what do you think of my robot voice? Huh?
What do you think of my robot voice? All right, yeah, I don't know. They're trying to get me. I can tell with that music.
That's terrifying.
It's a great movie. It's really the most awkward scene I remember as a kid was where like the robot and the mom are trying to reconnect, and it's like this is before silicone robots. You know, the spaghetti strainer robot is not appealing to the mom. It's very clear. As a child, you can tell she's not into him as a robot.
She's not feeling it, huh?
Yeah, it's kind of I got to rewatch this movie.
You have to. I like that how you put pressure on yourself. So that like this is something that's really that's good.
Well, I don't know. I got kind of thrown there, but it looks like my internet is kind of it's working now. It's good to see you guys.
You're just downloading the whole CIA's whole database. Is that what's happening? It's just messing with your signal. Oh. Shouldn't have said it.
Too soon.
Oh, I said the word. Oh, damn. I'm sorry. Oh, you can't take it back too. Once it's signaled, then it's there. Oh, shoot.
Side note: could you guys? I think the best protest the American people could do would be for absolutely no one, on election day to go vote. Imagine if there were just 0 votes. Like, what the fuck would they do?
I think it would be more practical.
Come alas, whole world is torn. Written the time and fires in the night. Deleted footage shows.
Sorry, I cut 0% of
There's
that.
a major lag there.
I thought it was going to be Sam jumping in just then, but
yeah, every time I think it's Sam about to jump in. Yeah, Sam, where are you? I was saying that I think that a more practical version of that would be a vote of no confidence, like a literal, like always has to be included on every single ballot and every single election, that you can vote that, hey, I took the effort to show up and show my ID or not in many cases, and like take the little thing, like I'm actively participating in the system, but that the system is not giving me any of the options that I want, instead of assuming that every non-vote is some sort of an act of defiance when it could just be apathy. You know what I mean? So I think that there's something really valuable in judging people's, like apathy versus, hey, I'm willing to go through all the steps that you've laid in front of me just to tell you, nope, not for me.
Right. I just don't like the tug of war.
Yeah,
like
but
this freaking tug of war of extremes. Like it seems like there's just like so little compromise these days. I don't even like. Didn't we used to have compromise?
But
like
Pol Pot. No, compromise is always just concessions. Compromise is bad. What we need is heterodoxy. You know that the extreme left and the extreme right both love the same automatic weapons. I think that we need to look at the Mennonites. I know that I was talking about them earlier. Kurt, he lives near a bunch of Amish and always makes me think about how they're basically Cambodian Maoists, and they've amazingly been able to deal with, better than anyone else, every tragedy that's come along the entire history of the United States. There's something about them Anabaptists, right? They don't have to pay taxes. They don't have social security numbers. They're not being arrested.
Oh, well, there you go, right there. Yeah, it's like this. It's like the 3 major city states. Yeah, good for. I'm sure they're doing great.
Why are the Swiss Mennonite, Anabaptist, Old Order allowed to not have social security numbers and be free people? What do they got that we don't got? And what do we have wrong with us that they don't?
Well, we can reject social security, or our parents can reject social security numbers if they want to. Nobody does.
Is that legal? Really? You don't? I thought you legally had to like have a social security number, sign the draft card, all that other stuff. You know what I mean?
It's now the decision's in your parents' hands, but like that's one of those things where like I think it is objectively dehumanizing the fact that you are assigned a number at birth. That's like the thing that was, that's the type of thing that would be written in a lot of dystopia novels, and now it's
I'm
like
surprised it's not tattooed on your arm, right?
Yeah, we have a number. It's just not yet. It's not yet tattooed on our body at birth.
Well,
It's
it
like-
never need to be.
6575309. Just
Everyone will always know it. Like I mean, and I guess I need to qualify that, but that through gate recognition, signature recognition, the fact that you register yourself to your cell phone, like everyone, it would be inefficient at this point to.
Oh my
tattoo
God,
it
it's
to your
like a
arm
Native
because
American's name. Because a Native American's name is supposed to be a secret. You're not supposed to share your name. Ishi never shared his name, right? It's like you keep your private name. This is like a major Melchizedek priesthood thing to the esoteric. Only your family, your closest wife knows your true name, right? You have a name that your tribe calls you that's separate, and a name for strangers. So that's what your social security number is. It's your Native American name.
I would thought you were gonna flip that, but yeah, I guess it makes more sense. Like that is your secret name, and if it gets out, then other people can basically pretend to be you.
Oh, that's
Numbers are the only uniform, universal truth, right? So it's your name that can be heard throughout
Well,
the
they're
cosmos.
Platonic ideals.
Didn't William S. Burroughs talk about this in the Western lands? Like the idea of like the secret name that like people would be given. They're like that like there's the name that they're known by, but then there's a secret name. I thought that was the whole thing. The pharaoh had a secret name. I don't know.
Is that a tradition that you keep, Thomas? Or should I say Gerald? No, I'm just kidding. I don't know what your secret name is. I don't know. I guess you can't talk about those.
Well,
kinds of
I guess
traditions.
I mean, I would assume that everyone has an ineffable name, but
That's the
then
way
the
to- that's the
question
spirit.
becomes: is it a secret name because you're not supposed to tell anyone, or is it a secret name because you don't even know it, or is it a secret because you can never know it?
Why is
And I
God's
think
name
the latter
secret? Is
makes
it
more
related
sense.
to this? You know,
It's
God's name is
it's an open secret. So like God, the idea of God's name is that it's something can be hidden. It's a mystery that's hidden, but also to realize it is basically to become one with it. That there's no substitute for that because and everything else is just image making, whether by the hands or by the mind, that you're just constantly projecting onto that. But the thing in itself, to pronounce it, is to be unified with it, which is transcending the whole thing. You know, that's the idea.
I was reading something recently in this. I mean, I guess it's called the Freemasons Guide and Compendium. It's actually an amazing book on all this, but it tries to go into like all the nitty gritty sources. And one of the things that blew my mind is that there's evidence that the word mystery never really meant, in the context it gets used now, specifically in like mystery schools and like the old mysteries of like, you know, secret societies, that the word mystery actually meant skill, and it had nothing to do with like something secretive or occult or hidden, and it literally translated to just developing a
from where? Which are you saying? Sewed?
Not from ancient Greece. No, not from like the Eleusinian mysteries. Those are a separate.
No, I'm
type
saying
of mystery,
sewed in Hebrew being mystery. Are you saying that has a different translation? Or are you saying that the way it's used by the European occultists was
the way that it was used by Europeans, specifically in like the 12th century and on, that use of mystery, which goes on to be like the modern version of mystery schools, not the ancient versions, but the modern version of mystery schools were kind of sourced in like this concept of skill. So it makes me rethink of any context where like a mystery comes up, specifically if we're talking like modern day sort of like mystery schools, that a lot of them really are just skill schools. They're like tech schools. And
right.
like
Well, the way that
ways.
I agree. I feel like it went through stages, like even before that, like if you're treating it like, you know, we're saying the word mystery in English right now, and like there's words that exist in the ancient world that we ascribe this English word that we call mystery to that. What was it pointing at? What's the repeated context of the way that it's used, which is really how you get definitions when you're looking at like ancient text. You're like, how does this get used repeatedly? So, but when you look at secret societies, the way that they relate to mystery is very much one with that we have a secret, and one could make the argument that that's skill to be able to keep a secret, because like that isn't that supposed to be like the number one requirement before anything else. I mean, even if you're looking at like beyond mystery schools, but you're talking about like MK Ultra, like those MK Ultra files, they have like their list of objectives, and like the very top of the list, from what I remember, was like, how do we cover our own tracks? And then like this idea of like, you know, keep a secret, you know,
like if you put away all of like the symbolic and the metaphorical and the allegorical stuff, the true secret of any of these societies boils down to the secret passwords to get in and out of the speakeasy, and like the secrets, like the nonverbal versions of that exact same thing. Those are the secrets. And even if you go back to like the original guilds, even before Freemasonry existed, like the guild secrets, it was literally the same thing. It was what's the word that you could say that would make it so that you got paid, 3 shekels instead of 2 shekels. And that was all
Right.
based on knowing what word to say. And people self-regulated that, but that became the ultimate secret, because if that got out, the whole system breaks down. So the premise being that it's not a secret so much in that like we need to keep it hidden, but it's like if you reveal this secret, the entire system completely falters. Like everything crumbles if the secret gets out. So it is inherently ineffable in that like if you say it, everything goes away. Or in some cases that they've made it so that it no longer exists. It's forgotten now. So it's ineffable because you can't say it. It's like almost like an agnostic secret.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. Well, I mean, isn't that the thing? It kind of depends on who you talk to, right? I mean, like how they're relating to what it is that they're doing in the first place. There's that book, The Secret War Within Freemasonry, that was published by Sync Book Press, and that kind of it shows like documented instances of there being like this big divide within the different schools of Freemasonry. In other words, not everybody's on the same page. And I think that that's like a common misconception of mystery schools, is like that they're all working on the sort of exact, people will see them sharing the same symbol set. And because they share the same symbol set, we think that they have the exact same objectives. But if you talk to one person in one mystery school, they might have totally different objectives for what they even think the basic purpose of their mystery school is in the first place. And so there's divides that exist within the mystery schools. They're not just like, oh, this coordinated thing. That's one of the problems with like really like, certain levels of like conspiracy theory culture, is that they'll kind of like project this ultimate control. I agree with Alan Moore on that idea that really what people are afraid of is just how little control actually exists and how much chaos is really there. And so you can almost seek comfort in the idea of an Illuminati that's kind of like has a plan, because even if that plan is like super nefarious, at least there's a plan, and something's like, you know what I mean? Like that becomes a source of optimism for people somehow, that level.
I don't know if I agree. I've heard that a lot. I don't know if I agree with any part of it. I concede to the logic that it kind of represents, but no, there absolutely has been like a Bavarian Illuminati and other kinds of Illuminatis that really
right.
orchestrating.
Yeah,
things
there
on a
are
massive scale.
families. Well, you're not allowed to say that. Come on, but there are a lot of families that seem to vie for control. So what's interesting is, like we said earlier, the Kennedys, they're low level but high enough level that they can move up, and they're also from Celtic nobility, okay, and similarly to the Bush family from the Plantagenet, although they're coming from the Fitzgerald line, so they're royal. The difference being Camelot is more made up on the spot. The ideas that are coming to Kennedy are reactionary to systems that he's trying to dismantle and create new alternatives for, and he's going about it in a way that will end up, you're looking at it, his brother and his family, and the potential for a Kennedy dynasty that goes on indefinitely, right? And instead, the Bush family have to organize and orchestrate to replace that potential, and that requires a really discerned movement. That requires a really serious plan, and that plan is even more of a plan than Camelot ever was.
Right, but you know where Camelot came from in the first place, like why we know of Camelot as far as the Kennedys go. That was the women, that was the wives. Like they're the ones who spread the Camelot idea. Not to say that John and others didn't ascribe to it, but that whole idea of Camelot as this kind of what how they were relating to it. Like that's like all of these Kennedy women, including Jackie.
I wish I would have known that the Camelot was going to come up, but I know for a fact there is a Bach saga thread with Camelot. I'm pretty sure Eeyore Bach made a claim as to being like the source of Camelot's story.
All right, so relate
being. I remember reading the word Camelot and yeah.
Camelot.
Yeah, well, just because like my mom and my dad looked at my mom.
Oh man,
yeah.
The joke there is that came a lot, and the Bach saga, everyone comes a lot. Yeah.
Okay.
Like with am I okay? I'm audible now. There's a lot with the theory of, well, a lot of theories of control and why people seek control, why central powers seek any sort of stability whatsoever. I think I've observed a lot of people and a lot of business owners, and I think a real problem, well, societally, I've talked about this a lot, but I've other things to say, I guess. But a lot of people are avoiding the idea of death, of personal death, of accepting death as an integral part of life. It's just, even though spiritually it may not be the end, you have to face the death of your physical body at one point or another. I think that's where a lot of these systems, I think that is the goal of a lot of these systems, and a lot of business owners too. I've seen, I guess, money and control really change the psychology of a lot of people that I've seen. It's like they get this idea that their wealth will preserve like their actual physical life, and they're above the concept of death, which of course is just wrong. And it seems like it makes that whole process more and more painful. And so I do believe, something like the Illuminati, exists and has existed in the past. But I think the means that it was trying to achieve has always been, just, well, laughably impossible. And it's like, well, I guess it's the main path to your own personal hell in a way. So it's like, I don't think people should necessarily desire control, because, like Yoda said, it's like everything is sentient, or everything. Not sentient, everything is transient. Everything about your life is transient. You're human, all your relationships are transient. You have to get used to that on some level, and also, try to build some sort of meaning. So I think, I don't know, these centralized forms of control, I think they always miss the mark, unless I'm just like totally off with my theory.
No.
But I think,
well, I'm pretty sure. I mean, I've got a pretty strong opinion on the Bavarian Illuminati at this point. So if we're talking classical Bavarian Illuminati, Adam Weishaupt from day one knew that it was a scam and that he was using it to just consolidate knowledge and then present that as that he had all the knowledge. So like, it was a literal pyramid scheme, and everyone else that joined, it was like, get in on the ground floor, and you can also look as smart as I do, and like So like he was selling people the ideal, and again, I also really feel the same way that the ultimate criminals, like they didn't know how to deal with criminals, and they were like, well, you're gonna burn forever even after you die if you don't stop being bad. And that kind of like got through to some people. The same way that the Bavarian Illuminati, like you could offer and like an initiation to a king, right? Like somebody that had resources beyond anything fathomable, and the only thing you could really sell them as a sales pitch was like, I've got secret knowledge that no one else has ever received, and I've got it for you. And that was the ultimate sales pitch. And I really think that Adam Weishaupt was a freaking timeshare salesman, and he knew it, but for knowledge.
Yeah, you know what? I want to say, Thomas, that I agree with you. And I think that there may have been a problem in my phrasing. I guess I was just speaking to, like, you have East and West Freemasonry, and not every part of the lodges aren't all on the same page. Like, but if you're talking about, can secret societies do things in an extremely coordinated way and work together? Absolutely.
Right, Manhattan Project,
both go on.
Example of that, where you can have massive compartmental, and yet, like, not only is Freemasonry fractured, but there's still a northern and a southern jurisdiction of Scottish Rite Masonry in the country, because of just like weird little inner disagreements that happened at the national level. Not to mention that American Freemasonry and European and French and German, these are all completely sort of separate. Like they're interchangeable in that you could travel and go to these different lodges in like a grand sense, but some of them believe in completely fundamental, like different things that are not compatible. You couldn't take some of the practices and bring it to America and vice versa. Like they wouldn't even
and at the same time, they can be using the same, if not very similar, symbol sets. And I think that's what throws people, is because when you see those symbol sets, you're like, oh, they're about the same thing. Well, they relate to those symbols in different ways, some of them, not even all of them. Like, it's amazing the degree to which they are coordinated. It's just like, it's not as, as perfect as I think some people make it out to be, who really, if you go really into, especially when it comes to Freemasons, like, that's the big place where I'm saying it. Like, you could say it for like Golden Dawn and all the OTO or whatever, and they, but Freemasons aren't always on the same level.
I think the perfect analogy too is like the Catholic Church, where like ultimately the way I see the Catholic Church is like the ultimate compromise in sake of convenience. Like, how streamlined can we make this concept so that you can just kind of buy into it? It's almost like buying one of those stocks where it's just like a little bit of everything. You know, it's like the Dow sort of average or like the top 500 stocks. Like the Catholic Church kind of operates in this way where over time they'll just be like, oh, man, a lot of people are like really into this thing. Okay, we gotta pull that thing in. They're just like this ever expanding Walmart that keeps selling more and more goods. But I think that that's kind of at the largest scale that we've ever had in the longest running version. But Freemasonry is no different than that, where people find like, oh man, they really like it when they, you know, we bang a goat at the end of this ritual. Now everyone's got to do it, or like the main bodies, they will adopt it just as like the sake of like, crap, well, we don't want to go anywhere else. So, and also if it'll eliminate confusion. If it's like, well, these guys from this side of the country and these guys from a different country are all doing this one thing and we don't do it, and that's called, well, let's just do it. It just makes things.
That's the church too. You're like describing the church at the same time. Like they have that same issue. And
I mean,
you want to
they're
be like
born from the same kind of thing. Like Freemasonry in a way was for like the hardcore cathedral builders, like the ones that were like so, you know, fanatical about their beliefs that they were like, man, we're not like these normies over here. We got to make our own thing. Like it truly was hardcore Christian cathedral builders at some levels of that.
Mm-hmm. Hey, American Time Machine, what is the book that's on your
girl? This is my great mouse pad, Spanish for Dummies.
Spanish. Okay.
Yeah. I got most of this book down pretty good at this point. I'm probably like B1, B2 Spanish in there somewhere, but it's my only second language so far, and I got a ways to go. I don't know what I want to do with it anymore.
Do you have an opportunity to use it daily, or do you have to force it?
And it's I did do an Uber, and I had some guy that didn't know any English, so I was able to do small talk with him. But right now I'm in Pennsylvania, so it's like we don't get very much Latinos here.
I'm surrounded by Spanish speakers constantly.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking about relocating to Florida. Florida's a completely different animal for sure. Entire communities that don't speak English in some parts of Florida for sure. Well, Texas even more so in Texas, but it all depends. But I don't know. It's I felt like I had I want to be done with like learning things in my life, but I can never I guess stop the pursuit of something because I have different motivations for learning different things. And I don't know. I could go off in a whole spiel about that, but I tried to learn more Spanish because I visited Argentina. A lot of fun. I would definitely, skip the country to avoid jail time and go to Argentina.
I was trying to learn it with a cassette tape, but then the cassette tape that I had it on, it switched to disco music in the middle of it. So like while I was sleeping, and then like I went to go have a conversation, and it just like they were like, Espanol, and I was just like, that's the way, I like it. No, sorry, that's an old joke.
Yeah.
So what's happening, Andreas? Are you?
You guys are gonna have to do it all on your own. I'll just like push the end button. I'm standing here with my phone at this point.
Oh, it's like that. Oh my god. Okay, you got.
Okay. Well, crap, man. I should pull up everyone's site then.
Sweet.
I didn't know we were gonna do this.
I don't think I have those powers.
Well, where can I'm sure I can. American Time Machine, where can people find you? And I can pull all the things up.
Spotify, YouTube. My main thing is making music, if you can call it that. But yeah, it's experimental, mostly experimental electronic, but I try to work some instruments in there and take different approaches than a lot of electronic that you see. So if you like avant-garde type of electronic music, experimental stuff, you might like that.
Ooh, yeah.
I'm also trying to write, do physical writing more, but I don't have like an actual published book, but like if anybody gets a hold of me and they want a PDF of just like my ramblings of like 40,000 words, I do have one of those too.
Cool.
I mean, this is you, right? On Spotify, American Time Machine.
Yes.
Make sure we're not advertising the wrong person here.
That's correct. But yeah, all the recent albums, they're mostly in the electronic sphere. But like I do think there's a lot of like fun experimentation with a lot of them. Yeah, the one we went over in one of Andreas' shows, it was called Kaleidoscope. And yeah, there's a lot of like melodic things going on. Like
his music is not AI for people that thought it was. He does it for real.
Mm.
No,
Wait,
none of it
for real. What the hell are you talking about?
Well,
He plays guitar.
So yeah,
Okay.
sometimes that skill mystery thing. There's like, no, I'm sorry.
Oh, you're still manipulating frequencies in the physical world. That's so fascinating.
Kind of, yeah. Thank you. That's all I got.
All right, and David, tell everyone about SyncBook and all the great things you've got going on there.
So I make sync films. If you've ever heard of playing Dark Side of the Moon with the Wizard of Oz, I was shown that when I was in junior high, and I've been obsessed with the phenomenon ever since. What I share on this website is basically like what I would consider the cream of the crop. Like not everything I've done, not even close, is what's on here, but there's over 200 films for free streaming and download of different synchronistic anomalies in album and film pairing. So,
and I can't help but notice that you brought up this movie quite a few times today, The Rainbow Thief, right? And you've got Rainbow Thief paired with Designer, which is a really good one.
Yeah, Aldous Harding. Yeah. And and then there's also, you could probably take up to my Twitter too if you could. So I'm at David Charles Plate, at MK Ultrasound 723 on Twitter, and if you go to highlights on my Twitter, it'll just be like a bunch of different sync films, full length streaming. You can play these on your smart TV or whatever you got going. I recommend you watching them on Intelligent with a good sound system, but do what you can. I'm
not gonna skip around just because we've seen nipples.
Yeah, you get the idea. But there's Rainbow Thief one. But yeah, this is my work right here. So yep.
And I'm your temporary and somewhat inferior host, Paranoid American. And if you want to support me, I've got a project right now at nasacomic.com. We've already met funding, but we've got 8 days left. And we only got a week left. Okay, we got 1 week left. I got to start pushing this thing hard. nasacomic.com. It is a comic book, 40 pages about Stanley Kubrick and the moon landings. And I swear to you, it is jam-packed. Like, it took me over 5 years to put this thing together. It is jam-packed to the brim with every single little Kubrick conspiracy or OCD, weird little habit or rumor, Kubrick movie. Like, they're all sort of woven into the story, into the artwork. It's really the true love letter to Kubrick fans, conspiracy theorist fans. I'm going to make you proud. I promise you I'll make you proud with this comic at nasacomic.com. And it's cool, like little embroidered patches, and I got foil covers and stuff. But you got 1 week to back it and show everyone how much you really care.
I want to get one of them patches, man. Can I get one of them patches from you if I go to this website?
You got a freaking back. You got a back thing, man.
Yeah, I'll back the thing.
So yeah. The patches are on there. If there's any extras, I might put them on the site, but there might not be any extras because I'm just gonna order basically how many I need plus like 5 in case stuff get lost in shipping. And since we were talking about music, AI music, some of the best AI music you will find anywhere, at least in Florida. I'll say best AI musician in Florida. Go to SoundCloud/Sound Scientists tracks. There is 344 as of today, and most of them you can download for free and use it. This is a song called "Shot 'Em in the Ear" that currently went viral on Instagram and a few other places. It's got like over 1 million plays. Everyone seems to love the music. A lot of people are using Shazam, and Shazam says it's like some and it's totally not. It's an AI music. I guarantee you it's not whatever the Shazam song is saying. But anyways, you can go on here. If you could hide a collab, all these great songs, but I think I've overstayed my welcome on the promotion front. So thank you. This has been another episode of Synctank. We love you all.
Jeez. Is that it? Is this a fake hang up?
Usually this is where the outro. And welcome to the third hour of Synctank. If you're watching
deleted footage shows, shadow organizations, dancing hash actions in caves filled with milk and honey. CIA, take out JFK and the KFC. Golden Circle sells Pepsi for free. Forget the madness, come waltz with me.